We're on. We're on. Start the timer.
Woohoo.
Cool.
All right.
Here we are.
Well, welcome to Clarify the Podcast.
Clarify the podcast.
It's here. We're here. We made it.
You made it. God.
It's been a long time coming.
It's been a long time coming. We've spent many an hour working on this, and we've come here to share this with you.
We made it even more complicated by the addition of a very in-depth podcast.
Yeah. a 13 song, like, deep ass record where it's just like so many things happening, and we're just like, I mean, you can just see from this table.
Yeah.
Goodness.
But we're happy to be here. And so the point of this podcast is to just take a deep dive into the album that we have spent 3 years plus making, called Clarity. And we'll be sharing each song with you in every episode, except for this one, where we will just tell you about it, give you some background information, and hopefully we will set you up for an easy, consumable listening experience going forward with everything that we're going to dump on you today. Yeah,
this is definitely, like, for how much is going on in this record, I think it's almost like imperative that we have this podcast, because it's, you know, it's like a behind the scenes documentary for like a film.
Yeah.
You know, you can see like how they, you know, made like, I think there's a Lord of the Rings one that's just like so cool, where it's just like they built whole, like, you know, towns for one small part of the film that, like, they spent 7 months filming. It's like, that stuff's really cool to me, and I think it sheds a lot of light on just, like, I don't know, sharing with you all the effort and time and blood, sweat, and tears, so to speak, that we put into this record. So
yeah,
we're gonna go deep.
Yeah,
we're gonna go deep.
Few of those things will be, like you said, album-wide concepts. We're gonna do musical and lyrical narratives and how those interact and correlate with each other. Just our general experience making the record too, which was an interesting one, thanks to 2020.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's kind of a COVID record.
It kind of is. And yeah, just like greater context as to how all the songs came to be, why they are the way they are, which we definitely have reasons for. And, you know, for me, the whole point of doing this podcast is just because I would have craved, or I do crave, this type of information from my favorite artists. So I think it's cool to discuss this kind of stuff, because we certainly did before making everything. Yeah,
it's like funny. This record is the kind of record that's kind of like directed for the audience, for an audience that also wants to hear us talk about the record.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like kind of the same nerdy, you know, mindset that just has encompassed the entire process.
Yeah. So for the nerds, here we are ahead of time.
Yeah. Clarify.
Clarify. Okay, so before we dig in, I think it's worth just kind of telling you guys who we are, how we met each other, our backgrounds before, our working relationship on this record, and kind of go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that you have some more context. I think it's always important. So I'll tell you guys about me. I grew up in Kentucky, believe it or not. Everybody says it's weird when they find out that I'm from Kentucky, which...
Your accent isn't strong, except when you say, like, was it oil?
No.
There are words.
Bagel?
No, not bagel.
I don't know. But yeah, from Kentucky, northern Kentucky. And I grew up as a classical piano player. My mom was my teacher, and it was a pretty intense upbringing. And I definitely owe her a lot of where I am today, because she was tough on me, but ultimately it was a great thing. I guess notable achievements from my childhood is I got third place in the world piano competition when I was 9. Go me. Woo-woo. Got to play Carnegie Hall, which was sick. All I remember from Carnegie Hall is that I had this DS, or like a Game Boy, like an older, the side one, starts with an E, I don't know. But it wasn't backlit, and I was just so bored backstage. I don't even remember playing.
It wasn't backlit?
It wasn't backlit, so I was just like, oh, I can't play my game.
Oh, you didn't get to play it?
No, I tried, but I don't remember playing Carnegie Hall. I just remember that Game Boy horror story.
Wildness.
But yeah, I mean, I guess it's notable that I never fell in love with playing classical music. It was fun to be good at something, but I didn't really love it. And so I was trying to find other genres and types of music, but I was like a sheet music slave. So I was still pretty limited in what I was able to do. So I like played boogie woogie, ragtime. I got the first female junior division championship
Very
of
nice.
the world championship old time playing contest or something like that, which is goofy. At the end of high school, I really had to focus so much time and energy on music, and I wanted to move away, and that was kind of my outlet, was to go pursue music on a collegiate level. So that's kind of what I did. I still felt a little bit like a misfit though, because I didn't love it per se. I feel like I had some intuition that was like, there's something there, but I still like dreaded practicing, and I hadn't really found where I belonged. So I went to Belmont for commercial piano, and I was a performance emphasis with this secondary in percussion. I'm friends with all you drum nerds.
That's what's up. Everyone should have to take some kind of percussion lessons.
Oh, it was life-changing. It was so sick.
In undergrad.
Yeah, it was
school.
So sick. But I kind of hid from my commercial majorness. I had to take classical lessons for the first 2 years, so I basically just pretended to be a classical major and was in complete denial and avoidance and just a yucky relationship with like my more commercial coursework, which had to do with improvisation and playing jazz and like putting myself out there in ways that didn't really come naturally and I didn't know about. So I had this big old crisis sophomore year because I knew that I was going to go into junior year and have to give up my classical lessons.
Oh, that's right. That's how the program works, right?
Yeah,
2 years
yeah.
of classical.
2 years of classical with commercial lessons too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
That's good that they do a couple of years.
Yeah. So I was just having like a big old crisis and honestly close to like being depressed because I was just beating myself up. Like when you're that young, you don't think 2 years is going to pass and you're going to have to like face the consequences of your actions. But that's kind of where I was at. And I guess it's okay to say that like I was so desperate that I did research about how different substances
that's the place to take it, like the viewpoint to take it from.
Yeah.
Responsible, yeah.
Yeah, and so I was so desperate, and I had read somewhere and like looked a little bit into how Harvard was looking into acid to change your neural pathways, create new ones and whatever. So I was just like, you know what? We're going to have to do it.
Step out on an edge.
Yeah. So that was my one and only time doing that. But honestly, it was life-changing because I like set up this whole day. I made sure that I was going to have some time listening to my favorite bands. And at that point, I had found music that I liked, which was huge. But it was kind of this double-edged sword where I was like, oh my God, yes, I'm finally like feeling where I belong, but also like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do that.
Was it the community of like friends that showed you like these bands and songs and things that like were opening up your mind to like non-classical things more?
Yeah, totally. And it was great because I used to even spend hours on YouTube in high school and even younger than that, like trying to find stuff that I liked, but I could just never get there myself. But like it was so great to have friends and community who was like, I think you would like this, I think that you would like that, and sit there and listen together with someone and start to understand like, okay, if I'm listening to Miles Davis and Herbie Hancock and Ron Carter, I can hear that interaction now. So that was like so inspiring to be like, oh, I have the ears to hear, I understand how they're following the form, I know that they're taking solos and why and blah blah blah. But then it was just like, oh my God, I am never going to be able to do that. So it was like amazing and defeating. And yeah, so we had a little fun day. And then it was crazy though, because on that day, I sat down at the piano and for the first time, just like magically, I played and it was like the pressure was off to like perform well or to like make something up at like an incredibly high level. It was just like me and the piano, just chilling. And I did come up with a few chord progressions, one of which is like the second to last track, like chord progression for Bird in the Cage, which is great. And I was just like,
and that's one that's practically unchanged. That's one of the few, like that's one that's gone probably under like the least amount of change
Right.
out of the whole record, which is interesting.
Yeah, and then it was super weird because I had never, well, I'd written like ukulele songs, but I'd never written on the piano. But it was in that moment that was like, oh my God, this is where I belong in music,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to make a record.
Yeah.
And it was just so clear to me. And that was
I was gonna
2015.
say, yeah. What year was that? Yeah. A while ago.
Yikes. But here we are. We made it. So then it was like from that point, it was like, okay, where do I fit in? Like, it's for me, it's always this like classical versus improv kind of, we're towing the line or leaning into one more than the other. But yeah, a lot of this record is just totally an autobiographical reflection of all this stuff, which we'll get into later. But yeah, from then I like put together a band. I am super inspired by Hiatus Coyote. So I was like, my favorite band is like a band with all the members. I was like,
Do you remember who showed you them?
my friend Evan Brown.
Okay.
Shouts Evan
Cool.
Brown.
That's a big one.
Yeah. He showed me jazz for the first time and I was like, ew. When we were
Whoa.
seniors in high school, but he always kept on trying to show me stuff. So like he was like my first good like music friend. So
Seniors in high school.
we went to this
interesting.
like
So you were friends with him in college still, and he introduced you to Hiatus Coyote later.
well, I think their first album came out in 2013, which is when we were still in high school.
Got you.
So he showed that to me.
But you were not.
I loved Hiatus Coyote.
Interesting that you found that before you went to Belmont.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I went into school loving them,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool. But yeah, so from there I had a band and then realized that might not be the way to go. And then I've just kind of been on this trail of trying to get this album done, taking a bunch of different paths. I had a previous producer and then creative differences. It's all fine and good. Shoes don't fit. And then I was working with Aaron in different ways, and then it just totally clicked that he was the person that I needed to finish this record with. And so we've been working together since 2020 on the record, but we did a few things in the past. We were in jazz band together.
Yeah, sort of. I stepped into sight read and fill in for Garrett,
Yeah.
because Garrett Tyler was the drummer in jazz in big band,
Yeah.
but he needed a sub for something. Who knows what it was?
Yeah.
And we were trying to find whatever tune it was, and I feel like we didn't land on exactly what it was.
It was a Pat Metheny.
Was it a Pat Metheny
Yeah,
tune?
we'll link it. It was a Pat Metheny.
I thought we
Third
researched,
Wind?
but I think we thought it was Third Wind, but I don't think it was.
We'll figure it out.
Whatever it was some mixed meter Pat Metheny thing, and I was working way too hard to try to play this thing well because I didn't have any time to prep, and it was just sight reading. It was wild. But I just remember the rhythm section, when you go and sight read something, you kind of walk away, if there's anything you're going to walk away with outside of your own performative kind of critiques, you're going to think about that interplay of the rhythm section. What was it like to play with the pianist, drummer, or bassist, pianist, just everybody who's in the rhythm section. And I just remembered, probably because of your classical chops, you were just very on it. You were just very focused, playing a complicated part. And I didn't know the extent of the piano chart on that tune and what was improv and what wasn't, so I didn't really have a bias there.
Knowing me,
It was probably very written out at that point, right?
if it wasn't written out,
You had written something
I
out?
had figured out how I was
Right.
going to play it and would never change
right.
it.
Memorized it. The musical collaborators that I'm usually drawn to, this cellist, I think of this cellist that I worked with when I was an undergrad, who was a grad student when I was an undergrad, and I wrote a piece, a trio piece, and his just attitude was 100% why I liked working with him. It's just he's just bam, he's just on it, very focused, very intense. I keep saying intense, but it might not be the best word because it seems negative, but
Yeah.
it's just it's not negative. It's very focused in a way, very committed to what they're doing. And I just felt that with you. And I think who would have been playing bass? I don't even remember.
Luke Putney.
Luke. Okay. Yeah. I remember because I think of Carter. I think of
Right.
Thomas. I've had moments like that with Thomas too.
Right.
Thomas Altman, if we want to shout out to Thomas Altman because he's a great boy. So yeah, anyway, I just remember distinctly. And after that, it was a while until we reconnected, and it was for the Composer Collective concert. There's a Nashville Composer Collective, group of composers in town. And I had taken a piece that I had written back in undergrad and basically just like edited the crap out of it, just like made it way better. It's still insane and stupid, but it was better.
It's called Confusion
Yeah, it's the
Fusion.
stupidest name in the world. Confusion Fusion. Because I just like, at the time, just like couldn't name it something and didn't want to deal with changing it. It's just this really hard piece with a lot of weird mixed meter things and like polymeter and like asymmetric meter, and if that doesn't mean anything to you, then it was just very challenging. I kind of went into it expecting like, who knows what where this will go. And I had a bass player figured out. Was Dave on that too, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I had a saxophone player figured out, but the pianist I just couldn't figure out. I was playing drum set. And I reached out to so many people. I was just like so many people, one after another. I think it was literally 7 or 8 people until I finally decided to reach out to, at the time, my thesis advisor and one of my professors at Belmont, because I was a grad student at Belmont, which is how we ended up in jazz band in the same room. I asked him, I was like, can you play this? Like, I need somebody to play this. It's like a week away or maybe 2 weeks away.
Mm-hmm. No, not even 2.
It wasn't even 2.
It was like pedal to the metal.
Whatever it was not a lot of time. And it was it was like more challenging of a part than I should ever ask somebody. And the thing about Nashville Composer Collective is like, there's no financial support. So it was like, I didn't have a lot of my own money at the time to like just pay people. So it was like, I got to find somebody to play this hard music in a week with, no money.
Yeah.
So I just like asked Dudley, because he, Bruce Dudley, and he sadly was just, I think he was busy. I think he was tied up or something, but he was like, you should reach out to my student Cassidy Gephardt. I was like, okay. I've interacted with her one time in the musical setting. I was like, cool. Seemed, good, but I just had nothing to go off of. But at that point I just needed a player. So I was like, whatever, let's try it.
Yeah.
So I think I sent the PDF to Cass on like Facebook Messenger.
Yeah. First of all, you were like, are you free to learn something? And I was like, yeah. And then you're like, here it is. And then I looked at it and within 5 minutes I was like, cool.
Yeah. That's right.
And then I knew, because I was like, I want to impress Aaron Walters because he's so cool.
How did you even know how cool I was at that time?
Just because like when you're in undergrad at music school, like the grad students are like, there's that grad student. Like they've done some crazy stuff and they're doing some crazy, I don't know. Pedestals are real. Like when you're younger, like 2 years or you're only 2 years older
100%.
than me, 3 years
older. All my
than me.
professors in undergrad that I'm now like friends with.
Yeah.
I definitely like.
Yeah, idolize. You idolize people.
Teachers in high school too.
Well, and you were a sick drummer, and I had my 2 best friends were drummers.
Oh, Simon and
Austin.
I had been in small jazz band with Simon.
And they were obsessed with you. And so I was just like,
Shucks.
Now is my time.
Shucks.
And so I was like, but listen, like the piece that he sent me it's just like straight up my alley. It's like percussive.
I learned that after the fact.
And I didn't even know really maybe back then that was like a strong suit of mine. Maybe it was this mixing together. I didn't really grow up playing this percussive type stuff.
Yeah, but classical rep gets, it gets there.
Yeah. So anyway, like when I saw the piece, as soon as I saw the sheet music, I was just like, yeah, like I can do that.
Yeah.
It's going to take work. I didn't think it was going to be easy, but I was like, I know that I can do that. So I was like, bloom, 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 I can do it. Mm-hmm. And then Aaron goes, are you sure? Are you sure? But like, did you look at it?
I feel bad. Like, it's kind of like mansplaining in a way. Like, are you sure you're capable of that?
You were protecting yourself.
Honestly, I was like, for any human being playing this, I was just like, it's hard. Did you look at the whole thing?
And I was just like, yep, I got it. It's going to be fine.
Oh,
and
man.
then I was like, I practiced my butt off, but then we went to rehearsal and,
blew my mind. Blew my mind that first rehearsal.
Well.
Blew my mind. I was like, I probably couldn't play it that well. Like and everyone else was on point, and I'd known Ethan Yojevitz, the bassist, and well enough at that point, and Dave Williford well enough, where I knew what they were going to bring to the table. So it was like, okay, it's my piece. I'll be fine on drum set. So how is this like mystery person just going to fit in? And then you just showed up and was like playing better than everyone else. No offense, Ethan and Dave. You were just like, maybe it's like the fact that you were in school. Like I think Ethan and Dave were maybe working more or something. I don't know. Not to say you were more or less busy, but not that Ethan and Dave didn't even take it seriously, but it's just like sometimes when I feel this way all the time when you're just like gigging, you're just like doing the best you can, and you show up and it's a free thing. Also, I didn't expect them to like even dig into it. You dug into it more than you even needed to, but it clearly led to like us nailing that piece in a way. So
I think that was a piece where it's like if you miss one note, it does throw the whole thing off. So I just genuinely had to learn it that well.
There's a truth to it for sure.
There was no.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just consistent eighth notes.
Yeah.
And weird time signatures and weird stuff. Maybe we'll show you guys.
Anyway,
that is how we met.
That's what started it all.
Yeah. But I guess you can give us a little bit more about your background.
Well, I mean, I'll just say to link this too. We had conversations. I think it was at the concert when we actually did the tune, which by the way had to get cut like at the concert. I had to like cut multiple minutes from it.
Tragedy.
And it was really tragic. But we had ended up getting into a conversation about composition somehow, and I'm not even really sure what led you down that path. It probably was I
was already
result
inherently
of the bird in the cage. You were working with bands, you were making stuff. And maybe it was just the fact that it was a composer collective concert and you were playing a piece by me that just like fostered that natural conversation. And one thing led to another, and we talked about lessons. And had you been working on the record at that point, or you were working on string arrangements for that?
No. I just was like more generally interested in like diving deeper into composition. Cause like after school, because
we did talk about like concepts before we talked about the string stuff.
Yeah. Because I had spent time after school. I still felt like I was nowhere near close to like the player that I wanted to be in regards to like the theory side of it, just having like an understanding and improv, whatever. So I had kind of been in lessons with that, and I stopped those. So I think I was knowing that I wanted to make a record, interested in honing a different skill set that's kind of a little bit more up my alley. So I was, interested.
Eventually, though, you were starting the record, and we had lessons on the string arrangements for the record, right?
Yeah, I think we had like one or two just general composition lessons, and then I was like, wait, I know what I want to do.
Yeah, let's work on this. Yeah, which is I like that because it's in real time.
Yeah.
Cool. So that kind of brings us over to like the record where I came in, and one of the songs, Willow Weeping, which we'll talk about. I came in and conducted that in the recording session because in our lessons we had been kind of working on the concept of using fermatas and like how to notate rubato better and how to like logistically work that out.
Yeah.
And we also determined that like what Cassidy was trying to do musically with that piece needed to be this gestural thing where it was like gesture break of time, again, for those who don't have a musical vocabulary, fermata is like a moment in time where a moment in a piece of music where time essentially stops or pauses, and then it's up to a conductor or an ensemble member to kind of physically move in a way that can move everyone on together to the next downbeat or whatever they need to do. And we had discovered Finale, the notation software we're using, can't really codify that. So it's when you start, it takes a lesson to learn to go beyond that. So I ended up coming in when Cassidy was working with the previous producer. And I think we continue to foster a little bit of relationship, a little bit more collaboratively at that point.
Well, yeah, because not only did we work on Willow Weeping together, I took the Bird and Cage string arrangement to you and Light On to you as well. And so just understanding how Aaron operated in a lesson setting was so eye-opening to me. There was just this respect of my ideas, but still, I hate to use the word authoritativeness, but like, I respected you for your skills.
Well, there's there's a certain kind of like position an educator or a teacher or a mentor or whatever takes, where it's like, there's a knowledge that's intended to be shared,
Right. But it was just the balance of the two. And the way that you went about it, that I was like, I have never had this type of student-teacher relationship, and what I could anticipate would be a great collaborative relationship as well. So
Which is maybe making you question how some things were potentially going as far as your needs.
Yeah, for sure. And I mentioned earlier that my previous producer wasn't, the shoe just didn't fit, but I think it might be worth talking about like why that was the case. And I think the first and foremost, I was just really young. Like I was super new at everything. Like I had never even really intended to go down this artistry path. Like I said, I really had this vision of kind of pursuing everything with the band and every member of the band being equal and always, being this collective force. I think another thing that happened is that speaking of pedestals, like I definitely put this person on a huge pedestal, and I was just like, he can do no wrong, which is never good.
Never good for any relationship of any kind.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, especially in this context, it was a lot of, if I had an idea, it didn't inspire him or just whatever, he would kind of shoot it down, and then I would just take that as like bad idea. Right. And so like I would sacrifice my stuff and not advocate for myself, not stand up, which the result of that is an album that didn't sound like what I wanted, you know? So there you go. And so I think that I also inherently am like a very detailed, like you'll hear it when you hear these songs, like there's insane amount of depth and detail, and I wanted something like that. But I think that there's just different styles. Some people are more like, let's just go into the studio and see what happens, and then you get what you get.
Which is a super valid approach that yields amazing results. It's just with this particular project,
it was just not right. That's what I mean.
It was about it being real deep. Real deep.
Yeah. And then, you know, there's always some other stuff, just like expectations, and like generally, this is what I mean when I'm saying I was new. There's just like this non-formal aspect to it. Like we could have done a lot of work, and I would advocate for anybody, no matter how young they are, don't worry about seeming overly formal by setting up a contract and having as many conversations with a person that you're planning to deeply collaborate with on the front end to make sure that it really is a shared vision and that it's something that both of you want to do together. Talk about money. Talk about how to make amendments to your agreements and stuff, because inevitably that's probably going to be the case. But like as much of that stuff that you can get out, it doesn't make you look like a loser, or I don't know. What am I trying to say? Like,
no, I mean, I think it's like important to just, there's a definitely like an unwritten stigma of like being too uptight.
Yeah.
You know, especially like in the arts or in the music, it's like, oh, you know, let's just be chill about it. It's like, sure, you know, that's for some people, but I don't know. Like if you know you're the kind of person and you have this instinctive, like, I don't know, desire to be more professional and to like, you know, keep things in order and be very clear and with expectations, then you at the very least need to find somebody else that's on that same page. So you need to just be that version of yourself, so that way the other collaborator like either rises to that occasion, meets you at that, or is like, that I'm not integrity with that, so it's not going to be a good collaborative relationship, and then you move on to the next person. Exactly. It's just like if everyone's honest to their own way of working, then you'll find the kind of person that you need. I think that was more potentially where we aligned, where it's like the kind of intensity and like professionalism, yet like also there's a lot of candor and a lot of like honesty and like authenticity. Like that's why our collaborative relationship I think works, because we're just think about things in a similar way. So
I would even argue that because we had set up so much like structure and we were on the same page, that gave me so much of a foundation of trust with you that could cater to our fantastic like working relationship and friendship,
which is a big part of my production philosophy. Like trust is like the number one cornerstone of being a producer for an artist, because you're taking all of their personal, you know, deepest, darkest things and helping them manifest them into something else, while not trying to commandeer them or direct them off course. Like it's like, let me help you in this direction, and just hoping by the end that it all maintains the right kind of trajectory and the right kind of, again, integrity, authenticity, all of that. So it's a super important part of the puzzle, because if there's no trust, it affects conversations, it affects productivity, it affects end results, it affects a lot of different things, and it doesn't yield, as good of a result, I don't think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that was I was at that point. I was at a place where I was just like, my album was supposed to be in a done point, and I listened to it and I was just like, this is a culmination of all the missteps that I made.
Right.
And it's not a reflection of what I know it can be. And so I cried a little bit. And then I was like, what are we going to do about it? We are going to start over, even though I've spent my whole budget on it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be like, well, here we are. It's almost 2024.
I know.
And I made this decision in 2020. This was a 3-year, it was devastating to be like, this thing that I thought was almost done is going to be pushed off even more. But I do kind of have this like overly optimistic part of me that's like, everything happens for a reason. I don't want to unpack that. But like, I look back and I'm like, I could have finished the album, finished in air quotes, like just settled and released it during COVID, and then it probably just wouldn't have done anything.
Yeah, there were people, there were like distinct people that I remember being like, you should just release it. It's like,
yeah.
And this is the pressure I feel like we're similar in this way as perfectionists and people with ADHD. Like people are telling me all the time, like, just release it. Just, send it, give it to the universe. It's like, be okay with where it's at. And I'm oftentimes just like, no, it's not right yet.
Yeah.
It's not right. And I'm going to stand by, like, yes, of course that can get carried away, but like it not being right is like what makes me who I am. Like getting that to its place that I can perceive that I want it to get to is like the whole point. You telling me to release it now is like, it's not my authentic self just being like, I'd be lying to the world, just being like, yep, I'm okay with this representing me, So I feel the same way,
totally
It's like it took a long time, but I even as we were working on it is why I mentioned it, like this is what you were feeling before we even really started digging into it. But as it was going on, people were like, where's that record, Cassidy? It's like
every day of my life.
Yeah, it's like, well, you'll get it when it's done, and we'll be proud of it.
Yeah,
I was going to say it'll be amazing. Like that's up to people to determine, but
it
like
is amazing.
We'll be really proud of it, and that's, I think, really important.
Yeah, Yeah.
Anyway,
and I think even Aaron and I do have a funny little joke that we've come to over time. We are oddly on the same page about so many things, and so I do think that, like, number one, we're just kindred in some way, because I know that I'm going to work with people and they're not going to feel, like I can have all this integrity and it's not going to be the right thing in a lot of places, but in our dynamic, it is the thing that made me be like, oh my gosh, I know I'm going to work on my second project with you. And then it just ended up working out that I turned over the project to you. But
it makes me think of like famous director, like Martin Scorsese and like Leo DiCaprio and like all the people he just like constantly has as actors.
Yeah.
Or Quentin Tarantino and all the people who are always in all of his movies, obviously Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
Or the way like George Lucas always uses John Williams, like so much John Williams in George Lucas and Steven Spielberg's works, whether it's produced by them. It's just like, once you know that like that person understands what you're trying to do, that's that production relationship, that trust, that layer of emotional connection that needs to be present, because we're dealing with art, it's a form of art. We're dealing with music. We need to be able to kind of enter that space and exist in it very confidently and complete each other's kind of, theoretical creative sentences to be able to synthesize something that is holistically, makes sense and is rich.
Or understand when a plant is off axis by a quarter of an inch.
Or that too. Like, just
which
not
we
the
also agree on all that stuff.
All the little things. But that's, I think, what manifests, right? Like similar kind of nitpicky kind of attitudes that result in an end product that, again, we're proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was all stuff that we kind of had discussed in our initial meeting to kind of turn over the project. But I think that you should tell us a little bit more about you.
Me.
How did you end up the way you are?
Horrible things. No, this is your record, so I won't go too deep, but just a little context. I've been playing I've been playing musical instruments theoretically since I was, could ever conceptualize it. I have pictures of me on a drum set when I was 2. What does that mean? Who knows? But childhood development, surely something was going on there.
Sure.
Some of my earliest memories as just a human being was my dad in the basement practicing with his bands and running around upstairs and just hearing it through the kitchen floor, just Mustang Sally and, just tons of different, hits and older hits from, previous decades. And as I grew up, eventually when I became 5, and, my grandparents are very, cultured, and they I guess collaborated with my parents to be like, yeah, maybe Aaron could try piano. Mm-hmm. So when I was 5, I started piano lessons and weekly until I was 18. I mean, we moved to Florida for a couple of years when my brother was born. I was like 6 or 7, and that was kind of awkward. And there was a short period of time, I think, in there where I kind of chilled out on it a little bit. But pretty much from kindergarten to graduating high school, I studied piano most of the way.
The best instrument.
The best. Well, I'm not so sure. It is pretty sweet. I don't have good. I'm not good at determining bests of anything though.
I'm joking.
So I also, because of my dad being in bands, I also was exposed to I was studying classical piano, but I was also, classical piano when you're 5, it's not classical piano yet, but, I was studying academic leaning piano. But then I was experiencing my dad, being in bands and showing me Led Zeppelin and showing me Motown and oldies and all this other stuff. And then when I was 9 or so, my uncle, Mark, my godfather, he gave me an electric guitar with Calvin and Hobbes dancing around like a gramophone, on it, airbrushed.
That's sick.
And I had this tiny little amp that I would put on my belt. It was battery powered. It sounded like total shit. And I would just play, I don't even know, nothing that made sense probably.
You were enjoying it.
But it was just this new novel thing, and it was this cool guitar. It was red and fancy and whatever. And actually, if you go on my website onto the extended bio section, there's a picture of it in there.
Okay.
Anyway.
We'll get there.
r.aaronwalters.com plugged. So
let's go.
Yeah, so I then got an acoustic guitar from my dad and started playing guitar in bands. I'd also been playing drums since I was young because of my dad, and been around drum sets, so I always would mess around. Mm-hmm. So I was playing drums, I was playing guitar, and because I played guitar, I messed around on bass because I had a friend who we basically my dad just gave him a bass and was like, oh, you're gonna play bass because Aaron's gonna play guitar. And I had another friend that was gonna play, you're gonna play drums. And me and my dad kind of taught my buddy Brent Spreeder how to play bass and my buddy Gavin George how to play drums, how to start. And the three of us just sort of jammed together a little bit. And this was also after I had been in a punk band, and when I was 14.
Yeah.
There's pictures deep on the web somewhere with that. So I was just getting punk and rock and academic piano. And then I was also, as I was growing up, visiting my grandparents in New York City, and they were taking me to the symphony and taking me to jazz and taking me to Broadway and taking me to, just opening my mind up when I was very young, 10, 11 years old.
That's huge.
Huge deal.
Yeah,
huge deal. Because they were, they were very cultured, experienced people who knew where to kind of look and knew where to take me. And I was, to this day, super privileged, very thankful for that. Mm-hmm. Because that really was all the trifecta. It was I was studying music. I was composing before I really knew it was composing. I was writing music in bands.
Yeah.
And then I was ingesting all this rich art, museums and all this other stuff, going to the Guggenheim when I'm 12.
Well, your grandma was an incredible artist herself.
My grandmother, Marilyn Rosenberg, been a professional artist her whole life.
Yeah, that's huge.
My mom has an art degree. My dad's been a drummer since he was 8 years old. So it was definitely nature over nurture, nurture over nature, whatever, environmental things. So that's really kind of the gist of it. Recording wise, there was this Tascam Portastudio from 2005 that my dad and I would record on when I was playing with my buddy Brent and Gavin and some other friends from my hometown. And we would record on this crazy thing. It was super hard to use. But that was really my first foray into like recording.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really even know it. I look back at it now, I was like, that was just recording and kind of producing and like in a way.
Yeah.
You know, thinking about how to record and doing all this stuff. So that was really, you know, back in 2005 or so, you know, or from 2005, I think it was about 2005, yeah, where I was working on a lot of that stuff and composing and then listening and being like, oh, interesting, and kind of assessing and thinking about how things needed to change or improve. So anyway, that all melded together when I went to school for music and studied classical composition and percussion, and I also studied jazz drum set, and took jazz piano and studied classical piano still in college, and it all just came together. And I was in bands this whole time, and each band I was in was getting more serious alongside this. So eventually I was in this band called Early Bird, the Early Bird Trio technically, and I was studying, like I was like at the height of like discovering my artistry as a composer. And I really went hard on this record. The record's called Sea of Gold, and you know, another shameless plug. It's on Spotify, and we worked really hard. We gigged and we made money, and we did a crowdfunding campaign, and we made this huge 10-song record that's got like all this production, and it was really my first major foray. Like we had made an EP beforehand, and I had done all the production on that, and some assistant mixing on it, and you know, and like I had done some other records with bands in high school and things in a studio that was in my hometown called Subcat Studios, and learned a lot about, like, that was my first time talking to an engineer and learning how to, you know, have a conversation about, you know, what needs to happen when a production needs to come together in one cohesive unit, when like mixing and composition are really synthesized in performance. So anyway, you know, this Early Bird record ended up winning a regional kind of award, and it was still like a form of validation for me, where it's just like jumped right into it. You know, my dad's been in this scene for decades himself, and you know, it was kind of cool I just like made a record, submitted it to this thing, and got this award, and it was just like this, like, okay, all that time and effort and energy and like detail orientation and focus and all that, it was just like one aspect of validation. It was also, you know, my own, I was happy with it, I was proud of it, and that was enough validation as kind of on its own. Yeah. So making that record, one of my best friends, Eric Brown, who was studying sound recording technology, I was helping him a lot in undergrad recording, and I was recording with another band, the Rumble Scene, that was a band that was in Ithaca, and we were I was just exposing myself to the recording environment, and I was just realizing that focus and that kind of energy. I was just very drawn to it. So it was just expected that over time, those two things were just continuously colliding more and more. So at the end of undergrad, I was like, I want to go somewhere for grad school that will synthesize these two things. Yeah. And I want to study composition, but in a recording environment, studio environment, that kind of setting. I discovered Belmont, which is one of only a few schools who were really like blatantly doing it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I'm going to apply to one school for grad school, and that's going to be it, and we'll see what happens.
So what was your master's degree like title?
Belmont calls it a master's in commercial music with a specialization in composition and arranging. And it's very much focused on exactly what I was looking for. You know, composing, you know, having the intention of the study of composition, but in the context of DAWs, recorded mediums, that kind of stylistic place. Now, interestingly enough, I actually wanted to kind of craft a slightly different path, a slightly more like tailored path anyway, because I even had lessons with some people who were more commercially leaning, and I think I had maybe one semester with someone like that. Learned a lot of great stuff, but it wasn't really in line with what I was looking to get from it. So I actually requested to study with one of the classical composition professors. Oh, cool. Who also did work in DAWs and Pro Tools and played guitar, and Mark Volker. Yeah. So he's like, he works in Pro Tools, he works with Maximus P and Ableton and like audio manipulation and a lot of that. So it was kind of a little bit of a like amalgamation. And then he was one of my graduate advisors. Bruce Dudley was my other graduate advisor, and Keith Mason. You know, Keith Mason is full on, you know, production guy, like, you know, just like music tech guy. And Dudley obviously is a composer and a pianist, not super techie.
Yeah.
Right. Great composer. So it's kind of like those were like my team of 3 professors who were kind of helping me create this thesis. And eventually I was first going in with this passion of like classical music and commercial music. I was going in with this like, I'm going to talk about like the synthesis of these 2 things and like how like it needs to be more of a thing or whatever. I was like, grad student, like, intense grad student opinion kind of mode where you just, it happens in every level of college. Where you're just like, I think this big thing. And I wrote like 30 pages and Dudley was like, nope. In the best way.
Yeah.
He was just like, you can't say that. Because I was just like opinion after opinion after opinion after opinion.
Yeah.
No research.
It's like, where's the facts?
This is like scholarly writing. You can't just decide something. Like, you can't just like speak something like a truth, like some political people have in the past, and just hope that it's true and make it into reality. So like that instantly, I just deleted 30 pages, and he was like, check out this book, Everything in Its Right Place. It was a book that and I forget his name. That's not good.
We'll figure it out.
Sleep deprivation.
It's okay.
Brad Osborne. I'm pretty sure it's Brad Osborne. He got his graduate from, I think, Washington, some university in Washington, or his doctorate. And he wrote this book. This wasn't his dissertation. This was after his dissertation. His dissertation was about Radiohead and like a bunch of other shit involving Radiohead and composition and like super intense, like hundreds of pages of analysis. Like, so he wrote this other book called Everything in Its Right Place. And Dudley's like, check this out. Because he had known my interests and like whatever. And I read the introduction and it instantly was like, oh my God, I know what I have to talk about. And I discovered this thing. Brad Osborne was talking about this concept of salience, but he was talking about it from the perspective of a theorist, like an analyzer, where he's basically looking for salient elements in Radiohead. And the idea was he was using this as a word to codify the middle ground between where novelty happens in composition and where familiarity happens, and where they intersect vertically, horizontally, all sorts of things like that. And I was like, composers should be using this before the music is made to help them create music that has more depth and balance and tighter DNA and like all sorts of other analogies like that. So I ended up writing my paper on what I, codified for the sake of that paper. You can kind of use a lot of words, balance, like, equilibrium, but I ended up using the word salience to codify this middle ground between novelty and familiarity. And my whole paper was about how to use salience as a tool as a composer. And in my intro, I talk about salience and I talk about a few other concepts that need to preface salience, like this idea of ecological perception, which is essentially we all come from different musical ecologies. We all come from different things in our worlds, just like we do experientially, musically, where we get used to like, this is my understanding of what music is as a concept, like as if it was the world that we live in. And I take that with me to all the things I listen to, which then influences how I experience different salient elements. What is or isn't salient? Things that are, I begin to love them more. Things that aren't, I say, I don't like that song, or, I don't like that style or that music. It's because nothing is resonating with you based on your ecology. And right. I ended up really digging into, surface level, I looked at, classical composers like Stravinsky with Rite of Spring, Debussy, Dr. Gradus ad Parnassum from the Children's Corner, and Steve Reich with Music for 18 Musicians. And I was looking at a few different concepts, like basically like repetition, sonic contrast, and material manipulation, and how those things relate to salience. And then I went deep into Radiohead, Bjork, and this artist Becca Stevens. And I just went like, not a dozen or so, but a lot of pages on one song by each of them, just like pointing out, this is salient for this reason, this is salient for this reason, this is salient for this reason, this is salient for this reason. And just kind of showing like all this music that we love, it contains so much, again, rich, like its genome is so tightly wound and there's so much to pull from it. So how can we notice all of those things from a compositional perspective and try to create them? So this created this big philosophy for me that now has become the number one pillar for every single musical thing I do still to this day. And all of my students, I require them to like read the intro to my thesis.
Which can I just say, the biggest ballerest move ever. It was like, you want to be my student? Read my thesis. I'm kidding.
It's more just like, I could try to explain this to you, but like I already spent a shit ton of time writing this out 50 different ways.
No, I know.
Just read this version because I'm going to have a hard time trying to tell it, like, be clear. Like, that's the clearest way you'll be able to, like, maybe understand this concept.
No, I love it,
and
though.
Usually my students are the kind of people that like to do that, too.
I liked when you were like,
right,
read my thesis, I was just like,
yeah, I want to, and also, like, learn more about how I do things.
Yes.
Right?
See if it's a good fit.
So, yeah, if you... I'm gonna not go too deep on salience right now because we're gonna talk about it. It's gonna come up a shit ton, and you'll see like what it means by the end of this series. Like you will know what I mean when I say salience, compositional salience, composing with salience.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was a big part of my time in grad school. Yeah. So it took us like a while to get back on track.
Yeah.
Was it January of 2021 when we actually got started?
Yeah.
Like, because I conducted for you in May. And then we had, a few months went by where you suddenly realized things need to change with your current situation.
Yeah.
You hired me in sort of July.
Yeah.
We had a Zoom meeting.
First meeting, and I was like, please help.
Please help me with this. And I was like, whoa, that's a lot to like, very interesting to be like, I've got to take all this stuff. And we kind of had to work backwards.
Yeah.
There was a lot to do.
Yeah.
So I ended up, building out all of my onboarding materials, which I'll get more into later. We'll get more into that later.
It's great.
But like all this onboarding stuff that's really important for me to be able to do what I do, I think better. And I just like, and then it was like, a while till we got back.
Months, really.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And I think that, at the time I was beating myself up for like,
how long was
in my mind it was like wasting time because it's like I was already just like prolonging this but I do think that I just needed to take a step back. And for me, I had known that like I needed to do something to get back in touch with like why do these songs exist? Like, what are these songs really saying? Why did I write them in the first place? Why do I love them? Why do I care to pursue the creation of them to its fullest extent, regardless of cost and time and effort and whatever? And so, I don't know, I really adored my high school art teacher, and in his art class, we did pointillism, and I did a pointillism piece in high school, but it was just a fun thing to do. So I honestly don't even know. I think I was in a yoga class. Honestly, I was in Shavasana at a yoga class, and I just had this epiphany that I was like, okay, this is how you get back in touch. You're just going to draw the songs. I didn't even know what that meant yet. And then I immediately went gross as heck from a hot yoga class, like straight to Walmart.
To get some supplies.
To get to some, then a little notepad and pens and pencils, a little fine point Sharpie. And then I did like one little practice, and I think in my little practice drawing, just to kind of get myself back into it, I was like, how am I going to make these pieces? And I was like, oh, well, again, put yourself back in touch with the song. Define what the key word, like funnel the song into one word, and then you reflect that word via the image. And that's how these pieces correlated with the song. But you can see how that would be such a practice to kind of get you back to the intent and the heart of each song. And I had no intentions to really do anything with them. It was just going to be a me thing.
Right, like an exercise.
Yeah, and I started...
Wow, and they're so iconic now.
It's funny. I don't know if I would say iconic, but...
I mean, iconic in the true sense of the word. They are tied to this record.
Yes.
Like, as iconography.
Yeah. No, it's so true.
Patches and all your fashion stuff. Whatever.
For sure. But yeah, I had no intentions of selling them or doing anything. It was just I think that's also something, there's something to be said for that, of such a genuine expression, like a genuine artistic expression takes you so far. Like, I wasn't...
When you were true to it and doing the pointillism
pieces,
because
it's not like I ever was like, oh, I have to have something to sell or like something for people to look at. Like my true intention with these pieces were like... Personal. And then it just ended up looking okay.
Yeah.
People liked them and responded well. And you'll have a chance to see them as we go, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it did take some time. I think I needed to like emotionally heal and just be prepared to kind of face this monstrosity of a project again, which led to us really, really deep diving into it, like starting to work.
Yeah.
In January of 2021.
Yeah, work. It's good you say that, because making good art, I do think, doesn't always have to, but
it's work.
It can require some heavy work for sure.
And we did a lot of heavy work.
One eternity later.
Yeah, we couldn't get it all done in one day. That's okay.
That's okay.
We're making it up as we go.
We're just going.
And here we are. So we left off talking about everything kind of leading up to actually making the album.
Yeah.
And now we are going to get into Aaron's onboarding process, which is quite extensive and incredible for both artist and producer, I would say.
It's like an important part of my philosophy, which is like also integrated into when we talked about as far as like me coming on the project, why you felt there was some kind of, inherent value in bringing me on. There was probably some sort of implication of like the way I do things, like that, the onboarding process that I go through, the purpose of it is to learn as much as possible about the artist, so that way all of the decisions and just like all the ways of thinking are informed by the artist's intent, the artist's context for their work, all that kind of stuff. It gives me the necessary background to be able to formulate the correct kind of like types of leadership and things like that.
Right.
Which is like, I think part of the benefit of where we were at with the project being like sort of started and done in some ways, but not really done. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't even say done. I mean, we worked on it for like years after that, but it was like conceptualized as done, but it hadn't. We talked about this, how it got off course.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think like I didn't even know before asking you about being my producer that this was like a part of your structure.
Right.
I had like obviously had some context with working with you, and then just the intuition that like you were the right person. But I'll just say, as an artist, going through all of this was so necessary, not just so that you could understand where I was coming from, whatever. It was like a healing process to me. I was like, oh my God, like a producer cares about all this stuff. Like a producer cares to know every single like tiny last detail about my vision, where the songs came from. Like you listen to me blab for like hours about all of these. Well,
because again, that's like the essential background to being able to actually know what the hell everything's about. Like it's like, how am I supposed to? I always kind of talk about this like it's like I have like a cartridge, or I guess it's not a cartridge, it's like a slot of like that I put filters into, like for each artist. It's like, okay, I have to build the Cassidy cartridge that I can like put into the filter, or the thing, so my speech and thoughts like filter through it. It's like kind of the way I think about it. And like that's what the onboarding is for. It's like building that. Yeah.
One of the most comforting things in a collaborative setting that I've ever gone through.
Wow.
Was this onboarding process.
That's good. So, I mean, those psychological things are also super important, because like it's not only I guess it's kind of like a result of it. Like I'm doing those things to generate more accurate and like personalized forms of leadership and creative direction, which therefore like the whole purpose of it is actually just to create that essential trust that needs to be like there between like a really detailed artistic relationship, where we're going to a lot of different places and there's a lot of moving parts. And I'm also just like trying to take someone else's thing and bring it to a certain place.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of trust. So it's like, this is like, not only does it help me become more informed, but like that being more informed, I think results in more trust from the artist's perspective, I would imagine.
For sure. And I would say, so we'll get into like his whole process of onboarding in just a second, but something that's notable to me is I'm just correcting something that I said. It's like, yes, you listen to me talk about the songs, their conception, what I wanted them to be ultimately, but you had me log it. Like, we have a matrix of documents. And I think that there's something to be said for, this is just kind of like a hear ye, let it be known to people who are maybe looking to create an album, and producers who are looking to work with artists. Like, it was very time consuming. It was a lot of work, but having everything written down rather than just we talk about it, because talking is great, but we forget so much. So being able to log, you'll see like everything that he had me go through, but log to reference, and then so that we couldn't be like, oh yeah, like we forgot about things like a year ago, dang. You know, so that was another thing that was so comforting, is like, I know that my voice is going to be heard because it's right there on that document, you know?
Right. It's recorded in time, and we're always referencing it, and we're, you know, in the middle of any point in the process, we can, what were we saying about like this part of the story and how you felt during the time? And, you know, it's just like when there's enough moving parts, especially for a full record, it's like the bigger the project is, the more necessary it is. But I always kind of do that. So anyway, do you want me to kind of talk about that, like the general gist of it? Yeah. So the mainly, depending on whether someone's bringing me an EP or an album or a single or something like that, I basically start with what I call like an overview, an album overview or a song overview. And that overview takes form in a lot of ways. And we of course talk about goals. Like what are the goals? What are your goals in relation to the project? What are the goals for the album itself? What do you want the album to do as an entity? But also, like, what do you want out of it? And that was really interesting, because Casses were a mixture of things that related to the narrative. Like, you know, one of the things for the album overview was heart-wrenching and bittersweet feeling that Pixar achieves too well, right? So it's like, you know, whether the album sounds like Pixar, that's kind of up for interpretation, but there is a distinctly cinematic aspect of this record. And the heart-wrenching bittersweetness, meaning like this duality of, like, you know, multiple feelings. The word bittersweet kind of captures that so well. So like that is an emotional thing about the record. But like, for example, there's another thing that's like the songs sound uniquely and distinctly like Cass Hart, which is like Cassidy's artist name is Cass Hart. It's like that, it kind of realizes it into like this, you know, this personality, this kind of thing that is its own entity aside from the music in a way. So like, how does the music like bolster that entity unrelated to the music? It's almost like, how is the music a part of that other world, you know? So it's interesting how the goals can come from all of these different places, you know, and some of the goals were even just like the specific dualities of the emotional states that we went and explored on the record. Yeah. And through that got us on a train to really defining these things that we refer to as the dualities, which ended up being two words that kind of created a perfect oppositional kind of sensation, or like, you know, equilibrium or whatever you want to call it, that ended up becoming a really important guiding light for us throughout the way, and in determining what a part was doing or what it represented, or okay, we have something representing uneasiness here, or we have something representing, you know, delusion, and then we need something what represents honesty. We have something representing holding on to something versus letting go. And we should say each song is assigned a duality. Yeah, has their own duality. Yeah. Yeah. And that is something that we spent like a minute on, because it's like we're building these like guides, and we're building the roads that we're going to drive on. We're building a lot of that infrastructure and scaffolding to like build the record around it, so we can take the scaffolding down and have a, you know, beautiful cathedral when it's all said and done. So you know, the album overview dove into a lot of that, and then a big part of the album overview is the thing basically that I call like scope, which is just a general, like a wide list of, you know, descriptive things. So I tend to do a lot of the similar things like stylistic identifiers and sounds like things, which we ended up talking about Hiatus Coyote and jazz influenced things, and artists like Hiatus Coyote and Glasper and Brian Blade and Esperanza Spalding and Nate Smith, and but then also talking about like different elements of, you know, lead vocal things, like Emily King, and different aesthetics that way, and also the sort of idea of blending genre and different examples of people who do that. And then I often go into like, okay, what's the primary instrumentation? Like what instruments are leading this song? And then, and we talk a little bit about secondary instrumentation, like what instruments are going to be derivative of or supportive to the primary instrumentation.
Yeah.
And a lot of times with instrumentation, I think of primary instruments as like the song couldn't exist very well without those things. They're kind of the core elements of what make that song. Sometimes it's just the piano, just the guitar, but oftentimes it's like your main collection of like one harmonic instrument, drums and bass, you know. It's like that can be primary, and then if anything's derivative off of those things, then they become somewhat secondary. And another example of secondary instrumentation is like string arranging and horn arranging, and, you know, other like actual like orchestration of things, and also production elements and external variables that are adding, you know, things to the world. And so we're just brainstorming these things first, because I'm using this album overview to get a good idea of like what your opinions are, what you're thinking. You might be like, I don't like this instrument really ever.
Right.
And, oh, I love it. I love this instrument. So emotional connections to things. So like for this album, I really want to capture this thing. That really gives me a lot of information. And it also, you know, it's not just telling me artistic things, but it's telling me the logistical things.
I was just going to say.
It's like there's string players. Okay, who's going to play? Who's a good fit? You know.
Are we doing digital strings? Are we going to get live players?
Right. Are we doing VIs?
What does the budget need to look like depending on all these things?
Right. This album overview is both an artistic, you know, as a producer, it's like there's creative direction, but there's also logistical, like project management. And that is a huge aspect of this, and a huge aspect of what I love to do as well. And that it melds those two things. It's like, okay, what are we going to need? What are the resources we're going to need to actually pull this off too?
And I would say that's a unique thing about you, that you're willing to do that.
Willing to do
project management, which is huge. And not every producer has that.
Well, I guess I haven't like done the homework to like ask 100 different producers what they do and don't do, I guess. And it's just like,
I mean, I just know of a bunch of producers who don't organize the sessions.
Yeah. That's, in my opinion, that's like the job. You know, that's like what you need to do. Having that, you're the director of the film. Like you are the, you know, and that sometimes isn't the best example, because sometimes directors get like most of the credit for what a film is, where in a sense, like this is more your work. But in the sense of like, the director has awareness of like what the actor needs to do in this moment based on where the camera is and the lighting, and what the costuming needs to do to adjust, and what the set design people need to do to adjust behind them, and then what needs to happen next. So that way that can, and the director is really, and the producer of a film, like obviously are like trading that off and like being really aware of that. It's the same exact thing. I feel like of a producer of an album. Like it's my job when I'm conducting a string session to know what is going to happen in the future with this person, and what they're doubling, if it exists yet, if it doesn't, what the vibe is going to be, what the aesthetic is going to be, how we are going to mix it, how we're going to put it in the environment, or while we're doing synth sessions with Jesse, you know, like what's going on here, and how do we, you know, it's just like all the moving parts, all the in between. So and so album overview, we also talk about adjectives and just like what are just general words that you know, and it's interesting to look at some of these, you know, bittersweet, resilient, intricate, thought-provoking, unafraid, feminine, bold, inviting. I think we've captured so many of these things. And it's cool to look back, you know, because we reference this as we go, but we've been done, and the record's been mastered for a while now. So I've been kind of checked out of this now because it's done. So it's cool to think now, you know, months later, to kind of be like, yeah, we nailed that.
Absolutely.
And then I have like this other keywords where like single words don't make sense. So like a definitive closing of a chapter, you know, shedding of dead weight, inner voice whispering change. So that's interesting. Like that's like,
you'll see.
We'll talk about a big part of the narrative we call is like the change
Yeah.
the change narrative, right? Like this internal like growth within the concept of change. So it's really, and codependency and a lot of these things it's really important. So
yeah.
And then the big ones that we get into are the narrative. Like it's not just like, okay, what are these high level goals? And then it's like, okay, we get a little bit more finite, and it's like we discover dualities, and we discover adjectives and emotions and instrumentation and like aesthetics and things that are like quick and short. And then we dig into like, okay, what's the narrative? What's this album about? And we'll get into that next after we talk about some of this more of this onboarding stuff. And then we talk about the musical narrative, which like how is the music going to support the lyrical narrative and be narrative in its own way. So then we kind of generally get into this place where typically for each song on the record, I have other onboarding materials, and those include, you know, sounds like inspo documents where we look at reference songs, and we break them down and talk about what it is about them that you like and how does it relate to this record and what sounds from them you are enjoying and what emotions and what aesthetics and what approaches and all this stuff. And we do that inspo as well for the full album and generate a huge list of just like, here are a bunch of songs that all kind of like capture things that either like things that are songs of the moment that you're interested in at the time of making the record, which are influencing your musical ideas, things that you've always heard that you've been inspired by or wanted to, you know, recreate the feeling that's created. Or, okay, so then I can look into this and I can start to see patterns between them and then see, wow, a lot of these songs have this kind of variable, a lot of these songs have that kind of variable. Or, you know, interesting, we have like a variety here but this is, and trying to look for the through lines or trying to look through, you know, okay, what's the intention behind why Cass maybe put these here? And that is super informative for me because it's using real life examples to be like this aesthetic, this feeling. And even as we're mixing later, like these all became my reference tracks.
Right.
So it's like aesthetically and sonically they become influences, conceptually, artistically, creatively, narratively, they become influences in that way. So, you know, we have things on here like Naipom, Homebody, and Esperanza, Heaven and Pennies, and Kudu, and
Hiatus
Chris
Coyote.
Bowers, Hiatus Coyote, Frank Ocean even, you know, so we have examples like that. And, you know, they all, again, they overlap in certain ways, and those are really, it becomes really revealing. And then we, of course, I observe these things, but then we talk about them a lot too.
Yes. The importance of documenting everything on some sort of platform. Like we use Dropbox paper.
Which we never would use again. We use Notion.
We would use Notion. Yes. I was just going to say.
Yes.
But there's also, I think as an artist, it's easy to have all these ideas floating around in your head, but to get to a level of understanding with them where I can write a complete sentence and I have to kind of nail it, forces me.
Oh, exactly. It prompts the artist to face questions that they may have not been actually facing.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
Because I have this intuition of like, I have this like hazy vision. I know what's wrong about something if I hear it or we're going down a direction, but to step up to the plate and put it in words and thoughts and spend hours and hours looking through references and then finding the right ones, it helps me solidify what I'm truly really looking for too. And then by the time I put it on the paper and then we're talking about it, I think that order of operations is crucial. Put it on the paper and then we can talk about it. And then it's kind of like this handshake moment where like, yes, we agree. These are the dualities.
Right, an agreement.
These are the references. And I remember...
That's true. It really is about getting on the same page.
Yeah, I remember you being like, are you sure about this, like, one Frank Ocean reference? It was Godspeed for Willow, where we had... I was like, I want all the, like, ethereal background stuff. And you're like, I just don't really know about that. You know? Mm-hmm. And that's great because then you just cannot... not be on the same page. Exactly what you said.
It forces that, which is a good point too.
You can't move forward because it's this inherent agreement. It's like kind of like your contract, because this is all before we're even opening the sessions. This is all before we're listening to the songs together. Well, in my case, we had songs to listen to.
We listened to the finished like versions that that you had done previously,
Okay.
I think.
Well, not together.
Not together.
No.
Okay, yeah,
So
maybe you had sent them to me.
and
it's hard to remember the detail there.
Yeah, and like if you're working with another artist, they probably only have like voice memos.
Right, at this point, exactly. It's like voice memos, demos, and this stuff is like trying to see into the future
Yeah.
of like what they may not even know that they want up here,
Right.
you know, at this finished state, right?
Yeah, and I just want to drive home like the amount of comfort and sureness that I felt as the artist after I got all these documents prepared and we spent hours and hours going through them together, altering them maybe a little, making more discoveries like the duality thing. I was just like, yeah, yes, I am going to make my record with this person. I feel so confident. How could we not? How could we end up making songs that don't reflect my vision after going through this process?
That's the idea. And
Yes.
what's interesting is a lot of times with artists, I actually do this meeting with them before even officially
Taking
building
them,
our contract,
yeah.
our official contract, which I think I probably did the same thing with you.
Yeah, because it's like you don't know.
I don't know what the deal is,
Yeah.
right? I don't know what,
How
what
would
the
you know
next
what to
step,
budget?
right?
How would
Next
you-
steps are,
yeah.
you know, and also just to share, because again, part of the producer's job is this logistical thing. Like, you should be able to come to me and be like, I want to do this thing, and I can
Yeah.
be like, I can at least be like, these types of things might cost this, or I can be like, real strings will be expensive, fake strings won't, but you'll gain this and you'll lose this, and
Yep.
you know, so having those kind of conversations are important too,
Yeah.
and getting to know. But I love the same page thing that we're talking about with this, because it's all that. I mean, it's developing trust, it's giving me an understanding,
Yeah.
but it's also putting our understanding in an equal place that we both know this is what we're trying to go for. And the more detailed you go, the more you get to know the true intention. The risk of being surface level and really succinct about it, you might lose the true deep depth of the meaning, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
it's one of those places where I think my obsessive kind of like depth over breadth mentality, I do think is like a benefit in that regard, where sometimes it can be a little bit distracting, but in
Right.
this regard, it's like setting up the whole foundation, you know, for the sake of the album's, you know, imagery. It's like
Right.
building the tree trunk, you know, that
Right.
the whole album is going to be built off of. So it's like,
Yeah.
that's the foundation. So I think it's like, spend a lot of time on that foundation, get on the same page, be in that place, and then we can, you know.
Yeah, and I
Move
can't
on.
over stress. This is maybe just like advice to, again, people who might be looking into doing some sort of project musically and whatever. I notice all the time people have this hesitancy of formality, like a hesitancy to set up a contract ahead of
Oh,
time,
yeah.
a hesitancy to like have really, really, really deep discussions. Like I think people skip a million steps. Like my least favorite thing these days is like, hey, can you do this project with me? And I have no details and I have no idea how much I can pay you.
There's
and I
a
have,
lot of
And I have
pressure.
no idea how much time it's going to take, but like, do you want to do that? And I'm like, no.
There's a lot of pressure, I think, in the music community to be like cool.
To be cool and
yeah,
to
to
whatever.
be just like, oh yeah, you want to do it for the sake of being, yeah. And like, even saying it, it's like, well, yeah,
Yeah.
you should be able to just like be friends with somebody and have a good time and make something and, you know,
Yeah.
just chill and be relaxed about it. Like, that's cool. But like, we're all understanding that we're trying to do this for a living. Mm-hmm. It's like, we should be taking that seriously. And then when
Right.
you're in a situation with certain people who treat money very, you know, very much like an important variable, and time is an important variable, and like respecting that, it's just really, it's refreshing. You know, I have to say that there was something very distinct about starting to work with you, that you are particularly aware of my time and the financial relationship to that more than a lot of other scenarios that I've been in. And I think that for me, it also, like, again, trust is like a two-way street, you know?
Right.
So like, I can trust that I can step into this project too. Like, it's also partially for me to get an understanding of who you are as an artist, so I can be like, what am I getting myself into?
Yeah.
Because I've been in plenty of projects where, you know, I see the quality standard is here, which sometimes is like higher than it might need to be, but I see a quality standard is at a certain level, and it takes a certain amount of work to get it there. And it's like, we have to agree, like, is that the quality standard?
Right.
And if it is, what are the resources that are needed to get it there?
Yeah.
So that's even personally, like just internally, not even externally with hiring other people. So
Yeah, I think I had been in a previous situation where resentment formed because a person wasn't speaking up about, you know, we had originally agreed on X amount of compensation. And then for a long time, and I was completely unaware of their feelings.
Right.
Like they didn't tell me like they were starting to get really frustrated and that it was getting out of hand. And I had maybe mentioned like, hey, do we need to like reevaluate? Can we have another conversation? No. And then it gets to this big point where like they hate me and I'm like, well, I tried, you know, you just have to be able to talk. And I also think
it's
that
hard to talk about money in this world sometimes.
Sure. I think also when things are invisible, like a lot of reasons why artists need to hire producers is because you can do stuff that we can't do on the computer. And sometimes it's invisible work. I didn't see you spend all the hours by yourself, like looking
Again,
into the section,
trust, yeah.
but you just have to be like as empathetic as possible and aware as an artist of like what you're really asking for. Like it's not magic.
That's why I think it's education. Education is a huge part of what I do as a producer. I think it's like an imperative aspect. As an educator, like I teach people production, composition, Logic Pro, all that kind of stuff. So it's like it's naturally baked into my mentality. But regardless of that, I think artists need to be more informed. And it's like how are they going to know unless someone in a position is like, this is what it takes to do this. This is what it takes to do that. This is what I had to do this. And sure, every producer has their own strengths and weaknesses and is really good at certain things and takes more time doing other things. Like I take a little bit more time to mix than I think an average audio engineer probably takes. But my strength lies in composition and ideation and production as far as like concepts and all that.
Yeah.
So like, there's balancing, which is also why, again, as far as the trust and the sort of candidness and all of this, my pricing model is extremely transparent and very detailed. Like I have, and it's even in every single project I do, it changes.
Yeah.
I'm at the point now where I do phased pricing where like there's itemized things on each phase of the spreadsheet where it's like the album overview document. They're going over this meeting and the time that I take the review things. That is a single cost. Like, then there's other things that are a single cost for each song that we talk about. And we do this at a more finite level for each song. Like those are each a single cost. And it's not hourly, especially in pre-production. Because like for me, I just don't believe in this hourly kind of rate thing for these creative endeavors because you spend, we're at the mercy of the muse or whatever you want to call it, to like this thing could take an hour, this thing could take 3 or 4 hours. And like, I don't think it's my like right to charge for that difference in time always. And so that's the other thing is like being candid about that and being in this place that's like some people would be like, yeah, you should be charging for every single hour, every single thing you do. It's like everything's valuable. Like absolutely. I get the rationale behind that. But again, there's sometimes this part of it that does get a little esoteric and a little bit like hard to pin down. And I've found that mentality creates a little bit more trust. Yeah. Because it's just like, if I charged hourly for the work that I do, I'd be
a millionaire.
I'd be not working.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it'd be...
If other people had the resources to pay me for my hourly rate, then I would be like absurdly rich.
One day.
But but also just depends the line you're like, knowing your environment and knowing the practicality of it. Right. I shouldn't be charging like a custom suit shop that it costs like baseline $1,000 to get like a custom suit made should not be going to like an impoverished area with limited financial resources in the community. Like they're not going to just plop up a business like that and assume that they're going to start making a bunch of money. Right. It's like, that's not how that works. Yeah. So it's like there has to be a middle ground of like where you can be and what to do. And again, I'm not like a business extraordinaire or anything. So I'm sure there's a lot of things I could learn in that regard. But again, it's not part, like my expertise is this realm, right? It's like production, composition and manifesting those ideas. So, but yeah, over the years, talking about money and things it just needs to be more of a conversation, and producers need to talk to each other about how they charge things. Yeah. Cause that's like not a nerve-wracking thing, but it's like all taboo. It's very strange.
Yeah. And
it shouldn't be. Even
within just like the music circle,
people are so
people
hesitant.
Playing for shows, like, if we all started paying each other, all of us would have more money type thing, rather than half of us doing stuff for free sometimes, half of us then paying our, it's just,
classic
it's so
examples
silly.
Of like when someone does it for free, then you can like
Right.
that one, they want to hire that person instead of this person, and
Blah, 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 blah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so how do you
It's tough.
It-
Everybody should just level up their formality
Yeah, absolutely.
and professionalism
Mhm.
and ability or willingness to pay. I think that's
Yeah.
I'm on my
and
soapbox.
flexibility. Like
Yeah.
I also like, because something costs a certain amount because of a certain amount of time or a certain amount of effort.
Right.
Like, be cool with monthly payment plans.
Yeah.
Be cool with like variable pricing.
The only way he's here.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like that's
But it makes it possible.
Yeah, like finance it,
Right.
whatever. And some people aren't comfortable with that kind of debt, so to speak. But
Yeah.
there's ways around it. There's other
Right.
creative ways that surely I haven't thought about. That someone
Right.
else could be like, what if we did it this way?
Oh, and like Jesse and I trade. Like trading is
Trading
amazing.
yeah, and it's like super worth it if you have the right person that feels like that their services of like are
Equal
balanced,
value.
equal value. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Okay.
the last thing on the album overview is that I want to mention is that is I think particularly related to you is that I have a visual art section
Yeah.
where it's just like, go find pictures, go find other pieces of art that relate to this album. And we found this, a couple pictures of trees and things like that. But some of the most important things were like your own pointillism pieces that
Sure.
we had just talked about before. In
Well, there's the whole
last section.
There's the whole tree ideology.
Oh, the tree ideology.
So
Did
what-
we discover that during the album overview? Or was that later?
Yes, because it may have started once we started digging into the first two tracks, but he was saying like, hey, yeah, go find images that look like the album. And I don't have like synesthesia or anything where
Yeah.
I'm like seeing colors with the songs, but I do think because I am more of a visual person, sometimes it does lean into that like hyper right brain side of things where it's like, can it feel more blue?
Yeah.
That's not true. And I don't like
Yeah.
saying stuff like that. And
Yeah.
also I have the ability to not because I'm educated as a musician.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes that comes from people who maybe don't have as much music education, so they don't have the language. And so it's just like, well, it does feel more blue.
Yeah.
But we ended up realizing that I should find an image of a tree for each song.
Oh, yeah.
And then we kind of came up with this whole tree ideology symbolism thing, because this is important too. Before anything, like for me, when I was going through my whole like sad music phase where I'm like, it's just a burden and I'm depressed, I'm never going to be able to do it, and like blah 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 blah, I had my big old revelation period. And for me personally, an evergreen tree kind of became a personal symbol of reframe that mindset. Like, I know this is a little morbid, but I don't know. After a lot of journaling and just thinking, I realized that I did need to change my posture towards music. And the evergreen tree kind of came to me as like this thing that has been there before me, this thing that will be there after me. I'm only here for a blip. And at the end of the day, I'm the one that has the power to change that mindset. Like,
Yeah.
stop wasting your time feeling so bad. Like, just get over it. Like, change it. And I had to do a lot of work to do that. But I guess the tree kind of started to symbolize like art in and of itself. And it was just like, no, like, you have the ability to partake in this thing while you're here. Shouldn't that just be a good and happy thing? Like, aren't you
Yeah.
so lucky to be able to do this? Like,
So
struggles and all. And so because that tree symbol had already been, like, I already had a tattoo of it and everything that I got like after college. Because that had been so important to me. And then, yeah, he told me like, go find a tree picture that goes along with each song. And it was so helpful. I mean, we had them plastered at the top of the Dropbox documents that we were
Per
working
song.
from, so that we were seeing them all the time. And then it was this like touchstone, like candle. It's like, okay, here's this like foggy tree picture. And then I was able to say stuff like, it doesn't sound as spooky as that picture looks. So having that context, something that is tangible yet non-tangible, rather than me just being like, it doesn't sound spooky enough.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right.
But it's like that, you see that layer of fog, because I spent hours and hours and hours hunting down these pictures. Like,
Well, because it's a form of translation. It's a
is.
form of like, this is in my brain. I have to find something that like truly represents what's
Yeah.
going on in my head.
and that helped. Like, hopefully, like, you weren't sitting there thinking like, oh my God, what is this girl talking about? This like
Well, I mean, we're artists. It's
Right.
important to use when we study. I think when you study art or find more interests in various forms of art, you end up with a little bit of an affinity for other forms of art that you
Yeah.
aren't as experienced in. Like I find myself having really strong opinions about design,
Yeah.
which I'm like, I haven't studied design,
That
but I've
makes so much
studied
sense
like
to me that-
artistic. Yeah, like I've studied artistic constructs in the world of music and balance and things, and like a lot of that way. Like,
Right.
so I'm not proficient in visual art, but I
Yeah.
have very strong opinions, and I have friends who are in media design and who are graphic designers and things, and who I have great conversations with in that realm, which gives me an information that's like, okay, I have reasonably valid opinions in that world of design. So it's almost like a cross-referenced validation of just like, okay, we can look and have really strong opinions about like this piece of visual art, this photograph, this,
Right.
this painting, and be like, well, how do we extrapolate music from that? And what does that conceptually mean for a production environment? Or
Right.
what, or is it literal? Like the one for Release where it's got the tree with the fire inside
Yeah.
it. And we were like, using this concept of fire,
Yeah.
in the song, and both literally as a sample and also just like with energy and with like that attitude, So little things even, and it just really, it can be super helpful to have,
Right.
I think. But if a picture or if a photograph isn't it for someone else, like
It might be like a
you relate
dance.
to that, but it could be
It could be anything.
movement,
It could
film,
be
sculpture,
fashion.
like fashion,
It could
absolutely
be anything. And
any other just interdisciplinary thing.
Yeah. Because I think that, all the art forms at the end of the day are intertwined. You can't have music or dance without music. We could, but they're intertwined. And so sometimes there is another art platform that can, for lack of a better saying, like do it better, like convey something.
Yeah, or convey it like more concisely or
Yeah.
something.
And so pulling from those other things and bringing them to what you're trying to express can be ultimately helpful. Like you shouldn't just reference music to make your music better.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's definitely a fair thing to say. It's like,
Yeah.
you can, but like, I think
yeah.
it can become much more detailed
And
Again,
inspiring.
If
maybe.
you're, I guess it depends on your approach, right? Like we take a very in-depth approach, but I think it's like, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's only going to be more beneficial and to help you look at something from an angle that you can't, like you're looking at it with a different piece of art. It's going to give you a different perspective.
Right.
Absolutely.
Cool beans.
All right. So now with all of that preface out of the way about how we met and kind of got onto the same page, and the project ended up in my lap, and we started getting off on that endeavor. Let's talk about the project itself now. We're finally here. We're finally talking about Clarity by Cass Hart and everything that went into it. So we're going to kind of preface the whole series with kind of an overview of the narrative and a lot of different aspects of the record. We're going to talk about different aspects of the narrative and different through lines, and we're going to talk about different like pillars of production and different main aspects to be able to kind of show people and give you kind of tease the mind a little bit about what's to come in the next and all the episodes to come in this series of Clarify.
Yeah.
So, Cass, why don't you dig into maybe like what the root of the concept of the album like really is about?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I would say it's autobiographical. Not that I wrote the songs in the order in which they appear on the album, but it is kind of a memoir, maybe, of the years like 2016 through 2019.
Yeah, you're not writing like fiction about characters or other
Right.
people so much. It's
Yeah.
some implications of that here and there.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the root of it
Yeah.
is really personal experience, and yeah.
Yeah, it's like I almost characterized myself, but then used my character of myself as a vessel to tell this story,
Right.
all based on real events. Overall, it's an album about self-realization. It's almost, and it's not a coming of age, but it's coming to next phase of adulthood, or like next phase
huge pillar of growth in your life. for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. And so this is funny. I was actually looking through a journal that I kept, and I wrote some of my earliest songs in.
Wow.
And I remember driving to Kentucky this was maybe like the same summer where I'm like, I'm going to write an album. And I'd written like 2 4-bar phrases of music, and I pulled over on the side of the road because I was thinking about it so much.
Wow.
And I wrote in my journal that I wanted it to be like a psychological based album, like explore psychology concepts. Before I was
you
aware.
never told me about this.
I know.
That's wild.
Yeah, and I have such funny little like young ideas, and they like I didn't know that it would be what it is today, but I had that twinge of, ooh, we should do this. Like, this is what I want to do. Yeah, some of those pages are funny. Maybe I'll like scan them and put them in here.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a lot of psychological concepts that are embedded within the record. One is codependency, which is, I would say, like the narrative of the whole album is basically being totally unaware of my codependent tendencies to aware and, all right, now we move forward now that we know this. Not like it's fixed, but it's just like...
That's super important. It's not a happy ever after
No.
kind of like, it's done, everything's great.
Yeah, but it's like, splat, here's the new phase of your life, knowing these things and trying to navigate moving forward with that knowledge. And, you know, we hope that because we've gone through this journey that we can act differently on the other side and whatever. It explores relationships. It explores romantic relationships. There's kind of a narrative of those songs that involve an ex-boyfriend that I have. There's friendship. We have a little fun friend narrative that goes on, just relationships in general. I would say trauma is one in multiple different ways. And then I would say the whole album is an exploration of wanting to be more vulnerable in multiple different ways, on multiple different levels. You know, in one regard, it's like, I want to be vulnerable and improvise when I'm recording these things.
Yeah.
There's also this big moment where we realize I'm not vulnerable in my relationships romantically. And that's the key to moving forward, and almost, you know, like my necessary thing that I didn't know that I needed was vulnerability. And then so it shows up in different ways. And
authenticity is definitely like a part of that too, I think.
Right.
It's like another side of that.
Right. And that can show up in lyrics. Like the earlier songs are I wrote them coming from a very codependent place. And so, you know, they show that, they reflect that.
Yeah.
Like I was so lost in my own mind that I couldn't even write songs about like the reality of situations that were really happening. I wrote them with this codependent film, and towards the end of the album, the last song is like, I'm being so vulnerable and so authentic.
Oh yeah.
And truly hitting the concept that I was going after on the nose, rather than using metaphors or using other blankets or veils in my writing. So yeah, it's really interesting that it kind of these concepts album wide can show themselves in multiple different facets. And I would just say, like, artistic concepts that are kind of explored as this songwritership and composership,
right,
and the balance between the two. That's huge, and we'll talk about that a lot. Like, before I started working with you, and even early on in our work together, I would just be like, yeah, I'm a songwriter, I write little songs.
I remember this.
And then I told Aaron, I was like, well, you know, I do want to get my hands on the album more. And I think that's important for multiple different reasons. One, if I'm coming up with melodies, ideas, whatever, it's going to inherently sound more like me. So he pushed me to, you know, okay, well then why don't you take the first stab at writing the string part? Why don't you come up with like secondary piano parts, and we can go from there. And
yeah,
then
all that stuff during COVID, all that production.
Yeah. And then also writing, like, our first lesson together was like, okay, well, I want to be a composer. So I already had this drive to do that, but through the process of the album, I kind of grew from this limited vision that I had of myself of like, oh, I just play chords and sing over them, and they're two different things unrelated to each other, this accompaniment and thing that I'm singing.
Yeah.
And it was through our work together that you know, I realized that I definitely have more of like an inclination, and the way that my mind works is definitely more composer brained. It's like I do want all these things to be connected and to have deep meaning and to put my hands on it so that I can express. And you definitely were integral into me kind of ending up more of a composer than I was before, just because I think we're so aligned in our mindset and how you approach composition. But I mean, that was a huge, you know, pillar of growth through working on this album.
I mean, it's so apparent too. I mean, it just like even the way you related to your music beforehand to the way you relate to it now, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And it was cool to figure out the ways that I could apply my classical piano self,
celebrating that
to this, you know, new world of music.
The beginning of Willing is a big, or the end of Willing. Big, endeavor into that kind of territory.
Right. So for me, it was huge in feeling comfortable where I kind of landed as a musician. It's this album helped me make sense of myself. Whereas before I was just like, I'm wrong because I'm not, you know, the pianist for the Nashville Symphony. I didn't do that route.
Yeah.
Even though I was told my whole life that I should be the most high achieving classical piano player ever. Like I felt like a failure. And then I also wasn't like a crazy jazz shredder, but this is the world in which all those things come together and felt like my musical home, which was awesome. So that's just kind of to talk about like, yes, autobiography for me, a huge point of growth. And then I guess in regards to the album itself, we have all these different threads that are important for the listeners to understand so that we can kind of be talking about them freely when we're going through each song. So the first, we kind of hit on it, but it's the narrator versus codependency thread.
Yeah, this is the big one. This is the thickest thread, the one that is the main kind of event of throughout the whole record, that I think at the end of the record is it's the one that I think that we inevitably reflect on the most, and that is the through line between all of it.
Yeah, the crux of the album, maybe.
Yes, the crux of the album, absolutely. I mean, it's exactly it. It's the strongest part of the DNA for sure.
So we go from the narrator, me, or character me, being completely subconsciously enabled by codependency to a character who is educated and aware of codependency, therefore not ruled by it anymore.
Yeah.
Simply put.
Yeah.
But, well,
and
obviously.
I love that it's not like completely, you know, moved on and perfect. You know, it's like it does not, the last song, like the title track of this record, does not leave us being like, we did it.
No, it's like
codependency. Like, it's not that. And I think that's like an essential part of that. Of it. Yeah. You know, it's like it's always maybe there, or it's always a part of who you are, and there's always something to be kind of considering there.
Right. And then we have the change thread, which our character goes from yearning for change, not even knowing what change needs to happen. It's just
again, subconsciously, the codependency is affecting them subconsciously. So they're like, it's like something's got to change.
But I don't know what it is. And then this is the central thread that highlights the undercurrent. I love that you said like the roots, if we're going for this tree image,
continuing with the tree
of the narrator's growth. It's this grappling with change. It's like, ooh, I'm hype, I want to change. And then it's like, actually change is hard. I kind of don't want to do it anymore. There's small victories, there's big victories, but song by song, the relationship to change changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we have our tool thread. This is our third thread.
Yeah.
In which this is all about discovery. And the tools are kind of, they're not physical tools. They're more like mental tools or
tools
lessons learned. Yeah.
Like that kind of tool.
Yeah, it sounds so cheesy, but it's true. So through different experiences, the character discovers these tools that ultimately will help them go through the necessary change to end up on the other side of this codependency narrative, which is, again, like we said, not I've defeated codependency. It's like I'm aware of this and how it operates in my life. And now I can navigate things from a posture of, I know this thing affects me, but I need to fight it constantly so that I can live a better life.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then we have a side quest, which is not necessarily a thread.
Yeah.
But on our journey, on our like narrator versus codependency journey, we have a little section of songs, it's 3 songs.
Like a side, yeah.
That are almost like this mini narrative. It is a side quest.
It's basically meant to exemplify the main idea of the codependency narrative and the change and all that stuff. It's meant to exemplify it in a short period of time, in like a condensed way. And I think the idea is that the narrator kind of enters the side quest, and we enter it as we experience the story, and the things that are learned in that side quest are then applied to the main quest when we get back, sort of the main narrative. It's like we go off here so we can have a different context to be like, oh wait, I can do these things that I need to do, or I've first of all, oh wait, these are the things I need to do. Oh, and I can do them because here's an example in this separate non-codependency world.
Right.
And basically, when codependency doesn't exist with a close friend, look what I can do.
Right.
So now after that, we go there. So when we come back to the main narrative, we're like, we're now informed by all that. And it becomes, we end up gaining these things from that side quest to be able to apply and act on in the main quest.
Yeah. It's going through a process from start to finish of hurt. I want to change. What do I need to do it? Oh, I did it. And now I'm on the other side of it so that we can apply it to our main narrative.
And this is the context in which it happened, is friendship and all this other stuff.
Yes.
It's basically, it's like it's a mini change thread. It's like change is impossible. Now it's possible. It's a mini codependency thing. It's like I'm unaware, but now I'm aware that if codependency doesn't exist, this is what I can do.
Right.
And then as far as the tool thread goes, it's, well, we learn things from the side quest, and now we're going to use them. We're going to given the context of this other situation, we'll use it, and we'll take it back.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to like recircle back on it before we move on. This is like going to be something we constantly reference in this series.
Yeah.
Is these threads. So again, we have the narrator versus codependency. You can think of codependency as the antagonist in the story, right? It's like trying to create that outward force, that opposition that's kind of, putting the main character in some form of peril. And there's that back and forth, and we'll talk about that. Sometimes the codependency is kind of has the higher ground, and then sometimes the character, the narrator, has the higher ground, and that switch is a really important part of this the narrative in this record. So yeah, narrator versus codependency thread. The change thread is a part of that narrator versus codependency thread. It's the through line that how the narrator is relating to codependency. It's the in between. It's the glue. So that's the change thread, and then the tool thread is how the narrator is relating to change, so they can fight codependency. Yeah. Fight this concept. So they're all integrated into one kind of concept.
Right.
And again, the side quest is this bonus content that helps give more context to those 3: narrator versus codependency thread, change thread, and tool thread, and how they all just come together into one story.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think so moving forward in regards to the chronology of the album, we've divided it into 3 different chapters. And
the songs aren't written chronologically, but events wise, right? What the narrative is. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think that is super helpful in order to digest things, but it also just feels right
musically.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just feels right to think about these things. And, we also approached it. We were heavily aware of, okay, chapter 1 is going to be this. Our character's messed up. We don't know what's up and what's down. We're seeking change, but we don't know what it is.
There's a little bit of fight back and forth with the codependency, but no, it's not going anywhere. It's just like, yeah.
And the character is very in their bullshit. They're the most affected by codependency. The antagonist is winning. And so the way that we dealt with that was via production.
Mhm.
We had this whole synthetic to natural.
Throughout the chapters.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not like blatantly that way, but there's elements. The third chapter is the only place where acoustic guitar exists, for example. It's the first tune on the third chapter, Willow Weeping, is just stark string quartet voice with a little bit of just environment. But I mean, it's just like stark acoustic kind of vibes. Right, but then you look all the way towards the beginning, and Morning Light's colorful. It's got all these things. Speck of Dust has this environmental synthesis and like production. And, you know, Echoes is very wacky, and
Echoes is super
and
wacky.
Candles is kind of, you know, it has its raw elements to it, but it's the drums are like super affected and kind of like trashy, right?
Yeah.
And Willing has got a lot of like production value and environment, right? So again, later songs have that too, but If I Knew has the only guitar solo on the record, and even though it's electric guitar, there's something very organic to just like a guitar solo.
Totally.
It's something very straightforward in that way.
Right.
Bird in a Cage is one of the most raw tracks on the record as full band. It's just like almost like a jazz recording that's live in one take and not really comped very much, and it's just like what it is. And then Clarity is obviously just solo piano, felted. You can hear the mechanics and voice. It's very raw and organic by the end.
And even the production value that we added to it, which would be vocoder, is we came to the conclusion that a vocoder is the most natural form of synthesis that you can possibly find.
The human formats of the voice.
Yeah. You can't have a vocoder without a raw element. So chapter 1 is the most synthetic, the most in regard to narrative, like unclear, unaware. Chapter 2 is our side quest. So there's kind of elements all across the board that are reflected in that.
Side quest, and then the end of chapter 2 is us pulling us back into the main
the main narrative, because that is where we gain our first tool, if I am correct. And then chapter 3 is, okay, we've learned, we still have a little bit further to go, but we're coming to this point of truth, really, of seeing things for what they are, of having clarity. That is why an album is named Clarity. Give that away.
Wow.
Yeah. So chapter 1 is Morning Light, Speck of Dust, Echoes, Candle, Willing. Chapter 2 is Salt, Release, Light On, Moonlight. And chapter 3 is Willow Weeping, If I Knew, Bird in a Cage, and Clarity. And it's almost like Clarity is like the epilogue, though.
It is. Clarity is definitely like an epilogue. Sure. It feels that way.
But we're just going to lump it in with chapter 3.
Like the first chapter is 5 tunes.
Yeah.
The second chapter is 4 tunes. The third chapter is like 3 tunes plus an epilogue.
It's true.
It really feels that way. I mean, Morning Light also is a bit of a prologue in a way, a little bit.
Yeah.
That's kind of the narrative overview for the record. But I also, it's important to talk about the aesthetic compositional overview. Like, what is this album made of? What's the DNA musically and sonically that we used to try to, lift up this narrative and coexist with it? A big cornerstone, we can talk about just like the genre,
right?
And it ends up being, probably because of the narrative, probably because of your compositional voice, my compositional voice, my interests, your interests, how they come together. This record became very like cinematic in nature, and not so blatantly like movie music, but it has these inspirations from scores and cinematic music in a way. It just it's a natural backbone of this record. I mean, there's a few backbones really. This alternative R&B thing where it's inspired by various different black music styles like R&B and soul and things like that. I think just out of nature of things that you discovered when you were at Belmont and sounds that were really appealing to you.
Right.
And I'd be curious, I don't know if you've talked yet about like what it was about some of those styles that just like really captured your ear. It might have to do with like the harmonic complexity is more indicative of maybe classical music and things that happen in that realm.
Right.
And there's like a lot of like expert performative, like there's players who are like, really those like high level expert performers, like as far as facility goes, which maybe it was something that like that.
Absolutely.
I don't know if something comes to your mind, just like what it was about that style that really got you. If I was like R&B, soul kind of realm.
Yeah, I mean, Hiatus Coyote was definitely the first band that really, really
Right,
resonated.
experimental R&B leaning.
Yeah, it is complex harmony.
Mhm.
It's so engaging.
Yeah.
There's always something new to be discovered. I think the level of detail is inherently interesting to me.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, it has that like improv quality, but oftentimes it is balanced with composition. And yeah, I guess I should say I picked alternative R&B as like a label because that is
Yeah.
like a true label in which
Mhm.
the Grammys observe.
Oh, yeah.
And Hiatus Coyote,
That's like what they fit into.
correct.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I guess if, you know, because we're in this like genre-less age where everybody's
Sure.
like, I don't know what my music is,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
so fair. But
Yeah.
that is one that feels
If you have to use one, then we use one that the Recording
Yeah.
Academy uses.
right. Yep.
Just because it's like, well, that's where it's getting identified. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where that came from. Because
Yeah.
I definitely don't, as a disclaimer, I don't feel like an R&B artist.
yeah, it's definitely
Absolutely
not
not.
blatantly R&B. It's definitely
No.
like inspiration. Like you have some distinct influences and
Sure.
things, you know.
Yeah.
When we think of like Frank Ocean, you
Right.
know, it's definitely that vibe.
Right.
You know. And then, you know, concert music, what I'll call concert music, a lot of people refer to it like as classical
Classical.
music, technically not just classical. Technically that's an era, blah, 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 blah. We don't need to get into that whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, concert music, notated music that you see on a stage in a concert hall. you
Yeah.
know. Like that, there's some of that, you know, because of your upbringing on
Yeah.
concert piano and really what that is and what that essence of that is it's a lot of performative detail. It's a lot of nuance. It's a lot of focusing on little things, because when you're in that really intense, highly saturated, highly kind of like high level competitive realm, you have to pay attention to the smallest performative differences in how you're approaching playing a piece,
Yeah.
and the nuances of how well you're doing it to be able to be better than the next person. So I think that detail orientation from your end and my detail orientation from other issues that I have, you know, really like combines into a way that is like part of the reason why this record has narrative threads and chapters and is 13 songs and goes so many different places and has
Yeah.
a lot of compositional nuances, because we both come from this somewhat academic background of like, you know, we're putting so much effort and energy into the practice of music.
Right.
It's natural that we're going to be detail oriented about it, because over time we just get deeper and deeper into the practice.
Yeah.
And then obviously jazz, to go off of the black music styles like R&B and soul and all that inspiration. Jazz as a term is of course extremely vague. It's sometimes used too specifically, I think,
Right.
to be like swing and other styles that are like that. But
I feel like that's
it really,
outdated, too.
It's outdated. Yeah, I mean, I love like, you know, jazz musicians that I know that we know that are just like, yeah, like what is jazz? Like it's like almost like a joke. It's like to say what is jazz itself is kind of ironic.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it sounds like pretentious or, you know, child like immature, like, you know, college kid being like,
Yeah.
but what is like color though? Like what do we see? Like, do you see the same green as like I see? You know, but like it is like, what is jazz? Jazz, you know, it means a lot of things, a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It has a cultural significance to a lot of people. It has a musical significance. But I think a big cornerstone of jazz is improvisation and interpretation of material and embellishment and extrapolation from material.
Which we definitely incorporate.
Exactly, we incorporate. And I think that there's an opposition between jazz and concert music a lot of times, both historically and just also musically. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap between the two. But, you know, it's cool to bring attention to when they do create opposition, where you have a lot of concert musicians who are really kind of like scared of improvising. You have a lot of jazz musicians who have no interest in like learning the same piece that 500 other people have done and learning it exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Because jazz music is more about that how you imprint your I wouldn't say a deeper part of your personal self into something, but sometimes it feels that way.
Well, it's individualistic.
It is a little bit more individualistic, even though concert music is. It's like you're this performer playing this piece.
Right.
I like this person's interpretation of Bach versus
Right.
this person's interpretation of Bach. There is that,
Yeah.
you know, but jazz celebrates that, I think, in a different way. You know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think those are big pillars of genre for this.
Yeah.
Production wise, one big aspect of this record that is I would say one of the biggest aesthetic cornerstones is that there are strings on every song.
Every song.
We embraced it as a almost as if it were a primary instrument, which typically strings are secondary, they're supportive, and the strings do have that role a lot in this record, but it is an important aesthetic piece. The woody, raw, intimate aspect of what strings can add to this music, I think, was an essential element, both intuitively for you. It's something that I love working with. It was, I think, something that it also speaks to how our paths cross, as we've talked about earlier in this podcast, about like I came in and gave Cassidy lessons on her string arrangements, and then I conducted the string thing in the session. And so there's something special about the string presence on this record.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, in one song, it is the primary instrument.
Right.
We have one song
Willow
that
is
is
like
just
strings.
string quartet.
Yeah.
The way that I just realized that we can kind of interpret this is, you know, when you're playing a video game and then you get to like pick your companion, it feels kind of like
The strings are like your sidekick kind of.
Yeah, kind of. We have side quest, now we have a sidekick. And they're kind of there. I wouldn't say that they're representative of the character, but they're almost as integral as a secondary character itself.
It is seem like it's funny that you say that. This is a great example of like we're still learning more about this record after we've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on it. I would say.
Yeah.
Like that's not an exaggeration.
No.
And it's so cool that we can be like, yeah, the strings are kind of like this side character. Yeah, they're like these like supporting characters. This is like, I don't know, you know, think of any example of that. It does feel like
it's like a character's shadow or something like that.
When we go on in the next episodes in the series about the songs themselves, like there's names for themes that represent certain aspects of the narrative,
and they're all string lines.
And its strings are usually playing that melody, or doubling it, or drawing attention to it, or creating some kind of aesthetic. So the strings are very important, and kudos to all of the players that played on it, which you'll be able to find that written alongside liner notes for the record, and you know, all the expected places.
Yep.
The other big piece of this is an exploration of sound design, because again, we were trying to create a universe, like a fictional universe in a way. I think I'm partially percussionist for a lot of reasons, but I think a main thing is just like there's an ingenuity in being a percussionist. Like it's the percussionist that needs to go to a junkyard to find pipes to tune to make some kind of instrument for this random piece of percussion rep. It's the percussionist who, you know, has to hear 20 different snare drums and be like, which one is the right one for this piece? You know, it's like there's a lot of like sound design in being a percussionist. Not to say that there isn't in any other instrument, because like we build tone, but you think of like an instrumentalist that might play, I don't know, not to single out any instrument, it's like clarinet is just coming to mind. Like you play clarinet, you play that instrument, and it's your goal to make that instrument sound as beautiful as possible, and there's a lot of range of what it can sound like. But it's not like percussion, where there are extremely disparate instruments that require extremely different approaches, philosophies, techniques, all of that. So I think being a percussionist is a big part of my philosophy and my attitude as a producer, because it's just like the world is our oyster.
Yeah.
You can just, anything is possible, and anything can be an instrument.
Right.
And I don't even do a ton of sampling, which is like a whole other like world of like, yes, the whole world is an instrument, and I can like get that sound and make a beat out of it. Like, and that's something that, you know, is not hard to do, but it's just, I'm kind of into like using software and using different things to like build and manipulate and kind of find things like that. And taking samples and manipulating them. But anyway, I think that's a really big part of it. So yeah, this record has a lot of this environmental stuff and stuff that we've talked about that represents the narrative and piggybacks on all that stuff.
Yeah.
We also did a lot of synth work with Jesse Gillen Walters, Basic Printer. This is someone who we've done a lot of work with. I've been making music with for a long time. He's one of my closest friends, and we entrusted him with bringing in his Juno 106 and some other synths to add this other layer to the record that is very prevalent throughout almost the entire thing.
Right.
That completely just shifted the aesthetic into a place that was very special.
Yeah, and we should also just disclosed, there's synth on every single song.
Yeah, there's some kind of synth thing. I don't know if Jesse contributed to Clarity because we already had the vocoder on that.
Right.
But basically every song has some element of synthesis. Even if it wasn't Jesse himself, we maybe have a couple layers on that, but he is on most of the record.
Yeah.
And writing out the string parts with MIDI in the DAW, and then using that MIDI to send it out to the Juno and then record the Juno back in. So we have the Juno exactly doubling the strings in certain sections. And that combination of synthesis and strings is such a unique kind of orchestrational texture.
Yeah.
And I should also mention that, like, Jesse, we used analog synthesis. So there's an element of organic, for it being electronic, there's
Right.
an element of organicism that is unique to analog synthesis that I think is also kind of like something to note, you know.
And it was intentional that we did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then there's a little bit of, like I was talking about the samples earlier, there's a little bit of manipulation of that. There's some wind chimes when we wanted a sort of very, very blatant, there's a moment where your lyric is something about wind chimes, and
With the sound of wind chimes.
with the sound of wind chimes, and we have an affected reverse kind of wacky wind chime thing, because I really wanted, there's not a lot of like blatant, you know, moments on the record, and I thought it was a really appropriate moment. Again, I went into salience a little bit before, and we'll talk about that more, but in the example of Candle, there's a lot of deception, and I wanted something very, very familiar in that moment.
Yeah.
Then there's wind and trees and environment and salt to give us a little bit of emotion and kind of setting, and there's fire crackle. We talked about the fire and release. Again, a lot of it involves just orchestrating different things and thinking about being a composer and an orchestrator, but just in the DAW instead of on a piece of notated, you know, sheet music.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of these production things too, sometimes they're just felt elements. They're just, again, environmental world building that just puts us into a new place, a fresh place. Sure, you can just have solo piano and voice, but you put a little vocoder on it and it gives it a different quality. You put a little strings on it, it gives it a different quality. And then you put certain effects and reverbs on the strings and it gives it a different environmental quality. And, you know, all of these different, salt is another one where it feels very arid and very just like the specific reverb and delay I used on the strings make it, when the strings release, you hear this sustain that feels very sort of fictional and fantastical in a way. And those environmental things are really important.
Yeah.
So with all of this stuff going on, you might be wondering, like, oh my God, it sounds like there's so much. How is it not just a mess?
It's because Aaron is amazing. That's why.
Well, the idea is, like, again, if it hasn't been clear at this point, intention, purpose, re-examination, constant awareness of just like, what am I doing and how does it relate? How does it do this thing? How is it combined with this? What is the sonic image? Where are things panned at? How are they going to be mixed? And this is why being a producer, an engineer, composer, my philosophy is like they're very much tied together, because if I'm adding aesthetic elements that are going to affect the listener and celebrate your narrative, we want to hear them. Well, if we want to hear them, we need to use certain mixing techniques to be able to hear certain ones in certain ways.
Right.
Automating things and using side chaining and using, you know, other advanced kind of routing things, and it's really important. So trust me, the awareness of how much is going on was always at the top of our minds.
Yeah.
And we did want to push that boundary.
Yeah.
This was not a record to be intentionally thinner and sparse. It was a record to be intentionally dense. And we want you to listen to it for the 100th time and be like,
ooh,
whoa, what is that thing? You know? So like that's what we really love about this record and what we really, I think, enjoy in music in general too. So that, again, it was something that was very clear. We talked a little bit about the synthetic versus organic thing, how chapters 1 and 2 are, you know, they explore a lot of synthesis and a lot of that synthetic world building and production. And chapter 2 and during the side quest is kind of a mixture. You know, Salt is very raw, but it's still very kind of also otherworldly.
Right.
Release is very like straightforward in a lot of ways, but has kind of some interesting, you know, production elements that bring it outside of that. Light On is sort of the more one of the more accessible tunes on the record, I would say, a little more pop leaning, which we'll talk about that. But that uses production in a more pop leaning way, where it's adding these sort of this ingenuity and this kind of like intrigue is the word I'm looking for.
Right.
And then again, by the end of chapter 3, we introduce acoustic guitar. It's a lot of just strings. We have like jazz trio. We have solo piano. So it's very much raw, organic, intimate. So yeah, again, to get back onto like I mentioned earlier that we've spent probably a few hundred hours on this project. Like we haven't really, like I log my time, and I definitely didn't log all my time for this record. And I think I definitely logged at least 260 hours or something.
Yeah.
Right. And this is why I don't charge hourly, because I'm interested in making a really high quality product, and at the detriment to some work, again, this is why people are like, when are you going to release that record already? Huh? It's like, trust me, right?
Yeah.
You can't cook a brisket in 1 hour. Well, maybe if you have a pressure cooker, you could do something with it. But like the best brisket is going to be like 20 hours, and you're going to care for it, and you're going to go back to it, and you're going to do this to it. And you're going to like,
And once it's done, everybody's going to be like,
oh,
that was really so good brisket.
Yeah, and they're not there for the whole cooking process.
Yeah.
They'll just show up at the end and be like, wow, that's delicious. Yeah, it took time, effort. I had to learn how to do it well. I had to and right, like 18 to 20 hours to cook food. That's a long time for when it comes to food. So
yep. This is the best brisket ever, this album.
Yeah. I use brisket because it's like probably on my like last meal list of like my dad's smoked brisket and my mom's Jewish brisket are like the two best things like ever. And again, the Jewish brisket, it's not smoked over 18 hours, but it's braised for hours, for like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
It takes that time to develop flavor and to break down the collagen and to like make the meat tender and to have like caramelized different vegetables. And it's just like, you need time to make those things. So we set out, that was something in our onboarding process where I told you, hey, I don't want to settle. That's why I'm coming to you after getting the album to a supposed to be done place. It was not it. It was like the album sounded like fast food, but I wanted a really good brisket. Yeah. And so that was just like, okay, well, we're making the brisket now. We're not going to settle for, oh, like why are we keeping this string line? Like we just wrote it really quick. It sounds fine. No, we're not going to do that. Yeah, being inherently sort of challenging ourselves at every corner.
That's like picking the spices that you're going to braise. You want to think about it first. Yeah. And it's like, oh, that could work, but it's like, but is that the best option for what we're going for? Yeah. Or, I mean, that comes up all the time. Yeah. But why? And if we can justify it, we keep it. Yeah, I picked this spice because it's like from this far off land and it was imported and it's going to be the best spice ever to enhance the brisket like quality.
Well, I mean, the analogy tracks because like whether it's brisket or whatever, when you're going to a nice restaurant, if you choose to accept that I think if anyone chooses to accept that there is a reality where they could go to a nice restaurant and enjoy that meal, then they're acknowledging that the time and effort and cost and study and knowledge that the chef has and the effort and all of that is worth it. Yeah. If you acknowledge that like the only thing in life that you ever care to eat is McDonald's, then sure, like do that.
And suffer the consequences.
Well, yes, there's health consequences. But I mean, it's more just like, then this isn't for you. Right. Then this record is not for you.
No, and I think that there's something to be said about that. So many people have been like, why is it taking so long? When is it going to be done? Are you just getting so carried away?
Mind you, we're not working on this like, we didn't have a lot of time where like every single day we're working on it. Sometimes we take a couple months off where it's like, you've got shit going on, I've got shit going on. It's not like 100% of the time. No. And that's not the reality of working on something like this. But still, when you think of like hundreds of hours, it's like, that's a lot of time to make a record.
Yeah, over the course of 3 years. But yeah, I mean, people are like, why is it taking so long? And I'm so glad that it's finally going to be out and people are going to be like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah, or they won't. And that's also fine, I think. Yeah. It's just like, we know that we needed to take that much time to generate the product that we were proud of and we were happy with, and that you felt like represented what you wanted to be represented from the get-go.
Right. And I wanted to be also like, I always said this. I was like, if I'm 95 years old and I listen back to this record, I want to know that I did everything that I could.
Because it's that kind of record.
To let these songs experience the highest potential that they possibly could.
And for example, like right now, we're planning on an EP for you for the for the spring, for the late winter, early spring. Yeah. And it's going to be completely different. Yeah. Completely different. Like,
I'm playing guitar
guitar. It's going to be an EP. There's probably going to be at least one other instrument at most.
At most, just guitar, voice, record it in a day.
Yeah, and maybe bass, upright bass,
Right.
and like that's it.
Yep.
We'll record it in like a weekend, and then it'll be raw, it'll be easy. So it's like, it's not about being incapable of accepting that as a reality. It's knowing that there's a lot of different realities
Right.
and a lot of different versions of the way some things can go. And sometimes you want to create the feature length film that takes, 2 discs or 4 hours in the movie theater. And sometimes you want to watch a YouTube video that's 5 minutes long.
Yeah.
And you can watch an amazing YouTube video that's 5 minutes long.
Right.
And you can watch an amazing film that's 4 hours long.
Right.
Right. And they're both great experiences, and they're both different experiences. So
And McDonald's is still good.
yeah, McDonald's breakfast.
Sausage, egg, and cheese McGriddle.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Maybe
It's
put a little
just-
hash brown on the sandwich.
Yeah, it's just what you're going for.
Yeah.
So that leaves us, instead of settling for McDonald's, or not, going that direction.
Right. Instead of going for the again, there's these things that a lot of artists and producers and musicians say that I think are great. It's like the intuition is speaking through these statements.
Right.
It's like, why did you do that? Because I think it's cool. Why did you do that? Because it sounds good. Why did you do that? Because I liked it. I just like that sound. I want to do it with this thing, or I wanted to. Those are all really fair, valuable, reasonable things. The intuition is speaking there.
Mm-hmm.
But being a composer, in my opinion, is challenging and cross-referencing your intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Your intuition is giving you something.
Right.
Being a composer is being like, okay, my intuition just gave this to me, but it is just like, it's just like this mess on the table. It just spilled out all this great stuff.
Right.
Now as a composer, it's my job to be like, okay, this is this. I'm going to tidy up that there. I'm going to move this here. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm gonna do that. It's really bringing a sense of finesse and organization and clarity to the idea. Oh boy. It is what I think the essence of being a composer is for me. And I think that we agree in that regard.
Absolutely.
It's maybe not for everybody, but it is for us. And the people who find that resonates with them will also, I think, enjoy this record.
Right.
Because I think intention is so important. Again, I say that again to talk about salience and the ecological perception thing that I talked about in the first part. That approach that is essential takes into consideration the listener's experience. So you can think it's cool, but no one if you think that one person is going to listen to it, no one really cares how cool you think it sounds.
Right.
You have to show people how cool you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Sure, they might listen to an interview where you might be like, I thought that was so cool. And they're like, oh, really? You thought it was cool? I'm going to think it's cool then.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that happens. But my argument is that the music should just speak to the listener. It should just have the power to do what it needs to do.
Right.
And in order to do that, you can't stop at the first part, which is when your intuition delivers something to you and you say, I like that.
Right.
That's the first step.
Mm-hmm. Refine.
Right. Improvisation is that,
Right.
which is what's great. There's a time and place for that that can be very enriching.
Mm-hmm.
But composition is taking that improvisational output and then looking for more opportunity in it.
Right.
Via salience, right? Via okay, my intuition seems like it was a little out of balance here. I need more familiarity to kind of create some balance. Let's do that. Let's add this thing. Let's add that thing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big thing. Also, when we were looking at this huge narrative on the record, your intuition being like, I think that's cool, it would have to be at such an insane level to be able to be like, I know exactly how this one little element ties into my narrative thread and supports this to be able to keep it through. And even us didn't even have the clearest idea of the narrative until recently when we were developing this podcast.
Going back.
We thought we had a very good idea of the narrative, and boy, did we find out that there's so much more to it.
Amazing, which we'll speak to in more detail later, is that because we approached it with such integrity,
with the onboarding and with all the
onboarding, with
yeah.
being on such the same page, with agreeing that this is going to be very, very detailed, complex sounding album, not from all approaches and all angles. We want details, we want complexity, we want the music to support the narrative, we want it to all be intertwined, we want to follow this tree ideology, we want to follow this, we want to follow that. We're able to go back, and when we make these discoveries, oh wow, this string line is representing the yearning of our character to step out of their comfort zone. We didn't compose that line with that intention, but we
informed our intuition to such a high level that it's there.
Embedded into the music, and it's still there for us to be discovered.
That's the other half of it, right? Like intuition delivers something, a composer assesses. Also, though, composer informs intuition.
Correct.
It takes time to inform intuition. So that way, when the intuition delivers something, you know that there's at least some possibility of more depth and more context and awareness and potency with that.
When composer delivers idea that they like, because sometimes you can hear something and you're like, no, but when you like something, that's
if
what you're
it's more
saying.
Informed, yes, exactly, right, right. Of course, when you inform your intuition, so when your intuition delivers something that you like,
that resonates with you, there's usually a reason.
There's a reason, right?
Yeah.
So it's balancing that, just recognizing your intuition as I think that sounds cool is not as potent as recognizing your intuition and saying, oh, interesting. It looks like I wrote like the string melody in this way because it represents this thing. Now I'm informed. Now I can make another decision based off of that.
And that's how we did everything, which is why we can look and be like, everything is here for a reason.
Every corner of this record.
It's like a fugue.
Yeah.
Like where you can analyze every note.
It's composition.
Right.
When you read a piece of music, there is black notes and other black information on the page, such as dynamics and articulation, and it's written.
Right.
It is there. It is the definitive answer to making that music. Mm-hmm. Just because you're working in a DAW and there's no physical written music doesn't mean you can't be that intentional, being like, that note's going to be staccato, that note's going to be accented. Then you're going to slur these two notes, and this is going to be this dynamic. Mm-hmm. Like, we can be exactly that intentional with a DAW and with composition in the DAW.
Yeah.
Another reason why it probably took so much time is because we're both huge perfectionists.
Huge perfectionists.
It's an understatement, probably.
Is an understatement. Yeah. I mean, we are riddled with it, but it's also why we're so.
And both have ADHD, so like distractions galore, and also so there's a reality, right? We're not trying to be like every 260, whatever. I keep saying 260. It's more than that. Whatever it is. Hundreds of hours we spent. Every single one was perfectly like conscious and like productive.
No,
of course not.
No,
like that's not real. Yeah, our perfectionism and ADHD tendencies are definitely just like a real part of our lives that we just like had to also kind of grapple with.
Yeah, and I'm making this interesting connection. Like the perfectionism and ADHD thing is interesting because I think they feed each other in a way. If something was off or slightly wrong, we cannot help but to be distracted by that. So then it feeds this, well, we must go on this incredibly difficult journey to like make sure that this one squeak that only us would ever probably hear is completely wiped away.
Right.
Or this isn't feeling right and I'm going to think about it forever and ever and ever. And then our perfectionism does not let us settle for anything less than I can listen to this thing from start to finish and there's not a thing that I would change.
There's not a lot. Yeah. There might be, 0.001% of things that I'd be like, yeah, maybe I would do it a little differently, but that's just growth. But I mean, the thing is like, it's the perfectionism and distraction thing can be detrimental, but also sometimes results and you can harness it. It can help you really come up with something that you're proud of.
Yeah. And that's the whole like hyperfixation versus the dopamine imbalance. It's like it's going through this process. There's those two things happening all the time.
Yes, because of how ADHD, how our brains are wired, right? It's just like we need that dopamine release of just like solving the problem, So yeah, absolutely. And we also kind of joke sometimes and like say that this album is perfect for people with ADHD because of how like overstimulating it is.
That's why I like Hiatus Coyote. And that's why everybody doesn't like them. I feel like everybody that I've ever heard who's like, I just don't like them. There's
too much going on.
There's a lot going on and it just doesn't resonate with me. Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
It's the fact that there's a lot going on. That is why I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So again, that's why it's like that's why, that's the beauty of people and the nuances is that we all like different things for different reasons. We did try to hold ourselves accountable. We did try. And again, as a producer, it is sort of my job in a way to be like, that thing we don't need to worry about.
Right.
I mean, there was definitely some times so it was just like we don't have to settle.
Right.
But like that is good. Like it's more about like finding the beauty and the natural beauty in something like that.
Absolutely. So I would say now our listeners have all the context and probably more.
Yeah, probably more
than
context
what they need.
But that's cool. It's kind of like a little like, it's like a behind the scenes movie or like a, documentary,
Yeah.
context of how we got together and started working together in that way and what we made.
Yeah. So why did we just spend so much time explaining all these things, our background, all the little narratives that go along with the album itself, your process as a producer?
Yeah.
I think we need to tell them.
Yeah. Well, I think
The
it's,
point
Yeah,
of
I think
why.
it's just because it gives the listener more information about the ins and outs.
Right.
This is who we are as people and how that relates to the music we made. This is how us as people came together to make the record we made.
Right.
And this is how, we faced the coming together as far as the onboarding and how we got through integrating what your needs were to my levels of expertise or whatever, and how we, synthesize those two those two things into something that could result in a record.
Right.
And then we also wanted to give listeners the context of what the record's about, because there's a lot of moving parts. And
Right.
I think we want people to have that kind of awareness of just like the overarching things as well.
Right. It's one thing to just listen to music and kind of come to your own conclusions, but the whole reason that we're doing this podcast is...
It's for the people who want to dig into it deeper.
Right. I mean, I wish that Hiatus Coyote would do that.
I know, right? But I mean,
This
who
is
knows?
my
Maybe
this is
another
my
time.
ask.
Yeah.
If you guys ever want to do
Right.
that. But yeah, things to take away too, because moving forward, we're going to enter the formatting of one episode per song. We want to also be able to speak freely about the chapters, the narratives, narrator versus codependency, change thread, tool thread, side quest. We want to be able to openly discuss those things.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about salience. I'm going to talk about this other thing called Schmerg. And we'll get into that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, we want to prime you for the fun little journey that we're going to take you on in the following episodes.
Hope you've been taking notes.
Oh my gosh. No, we'll describe everything kind of subtly again.
Yeah, re-listenability maybe.
Yeah. So next episode is Morning Light.
Next episode, we start with the first track of the record.
First track of the record. There's so much to talk about.
There's so much to talk about. We'll be talking about a lot of different things, back to the intention thing and how my onboarding relates to it. We're going to try our best to kind of smoothly come from this introductory episode into kind of getting off on a good foot to start digging in.
Yeah.
So onward to the next episode.
Yep. Where we clarify. I'm sorry, I had to.